regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance for Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. I'm the Chair, City Councilor at Large, Rebecca LISI. To my left, we have Acting Mayor Terry Murphy, who also represents Ward 2 of the city. To my right, we have City Councilor Linda Vacan, who represents Ward 5. Online, we're joined by Libby Hernandez, Councilor for Ward 4. And that's all for councilors at the moment. Item number 1 on our agenda is an order filed by Mayor Murphy and myself.
Make a motion to take up item 1.
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? So moved. So this is an order that the City Council consider adopting a wage theft ordinance for all contractors doing projects for the city or receiving special tax incentives by the city, similar to Easthampton and Springfield, with the following purposes: prevent misclassification of employees as independent contractors, assure that employees are paying all payroll taxes and worker compensation premiums, comply with state laws governing the payment of prevailing wages, and assure that contractors provide opportunities for Holyoke residents, veterans, people of color, and women. So this was taken up twice before. Once before.
I can just make an amendment on the order because we're on the 4th line down where it says that employees are paying all payroll taxes. I'm assuming we made employers.
Yes, employers. Thank you for that. So we have with us a draft that came out of the last meeting, and I believe what we are looking at here is essentially the bulk of the wage theft ordinance that actually takes out all of the equity and hiring provisions that were under discussion at the last meeting, except for in the case of veterans. Veterans are left in as a specific build out in terms of meeting hiring obligations. And we do have both Lisa Clausen and Charlie Payne from Carpenters 336 here to join us if we want help navigating the ordinance any further. Are there any comments or questions from councilors at this point in time? Councilor Vacan.
I would just note that we were taking out the first sentence of 7 if we were only referring to veterans, because the other includes everything. The first sentence.
On page 2, is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the idea here is that the contractor has to meet all the employment diversity goals regarding the Commonwealth, and that we weren't creating any local obligations that they'd have to meet beyond that. So it's just, as if it's a reminder, and there's no definitions of other groups that need to be identified. It's just that they should, as part of their obligation and licensing, be meeting the employment diversity goals.
But
It says shall, which is a compelling word, and a goal is not a law. So it's just very strongly worded relative to that kind of a statement and restriction relative to the business that would be applying to do business in Holyoke. And I mean, I just think we want to write it in a way where it's not sort of adversarial. I mean, we want to be business friendly, but we do want the businesses, to Mayor Murphy's point, to be complying with the state law. And when I've been dealing with federal and state contracts in the past, usually the stipulation is that nobody's been disbarred or debarred or suspended, and that they haven't been found in violation for X amount of time. Relative to those things, rather than getting deeply into also trying to be a local compliance officer to the state regs, because we don't have a very good track record of enforcing our ordinances in the city, and I don't know who would be doing this.
Yeah.
But I just think it goes a little bit far into the business of the business. And I just wonder if even as a city, if we would comply with all of these things in this ordinance.
If I
So
could-
that's,
Sure, thank you. If you're all set, Counselor Bacon, I'll pass it over to Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, I'd be fine taking the first sentence out, since, number one, if it's a mass use requirement, it doesn't have to be part of our ordinance. But I do like the contractor shall strive, leave out the also, shall strive to hire veterans. And I would just make that as a friendly amendment.
I'll second it.
The motion was made and seconded. I would offer a friendly amendment to your friendly amendment.
Okay?
And I would like it to mirror, the first sentence to mirror the second sentence. So the contractor shall strive to meet the employment diversity goals equal to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think that really says that locally, it's something that we want to see contractors commit themselves to, and we're not creating any additional thresholds or requirements, but it serves as a reminder. So the amendment would say, the contractor shall strive to meet the employment diversity goals. The contractor shall also strive to hire veterans.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to leave that, just, I mean, as I said last, I mean, my goal, and I think it's a valid goal, is to make sure that anybody that is hired, and any contractor that does work with the city, make sure that those employees are treated properly, that all the laws, state and otherwise, are followed. And in this case, the preference I'd be giving would be to veterans, and obviously with all the things going on and the need to provide veteran services and veteran jobs, I think it's crucial, but I mean, I think it's already covered, and that's, so I'd kind of stay with the amendment I made, if that would be okay.
Sure. So on the First Amendment, since the Second Amendment was not seconded, all in favor of striking the first sentence of Section A7 on page 2?
Aye.
Aye?
No? And the motion fails.
Councilor Anderson Burgess has joined us, and so has
Who has?
Councilor
Tanya,
Anderson
Tanya.
Burgess and Conrad Boker.
Thank you.
I thought the motion passed 2-1, no?
Yeah, I didn't hear any other.
But doesn't it need to have?
I said no. I think I was on mute.
It still needs to have 3, doesn't it? Because we are,
Well, I don't know who's voting. I didn't hear any, I only
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
3 of us vote.
Did you
Okay.
not hear? Can you guys hear me?
we
Now
can
we
hear you
can.
now. We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I think I was on mute. I said no.
So I have a 2-2 vote then, and the motion fails. I think before we go any further, we do have our purchasing director here. And because there are a number of places where we need to insert the name of the appropriate municipal office that will be maintaining these records, I think we should invite in our purchasing
moved.
director. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Lori Belanger, come on in, take a seat, and just turn on the microphone so the green light comes on. Hi, Lori. Thanks so much for joining us. And just because we're having a bigger conversation now, I think we could probably invite in Lisa and Charlie to answer any questions that might come up.
That's fine.
So once you sit down, just hit the button in the middle to turn the green light on when you want to talk. Okay, so Ms. Belanger, I know that we have given you a copy of this so far and that you've been able to review it. So do you have any points that you want to raise?
Yes, thank you for having me and allowing me this opportunity. The order before you is, shall the city council adopt this? I can't speak to the will of the council, but I appreciate the opportunity to discuss with you some of my observations, suggestions, as it relates to this particular draft. I think, first of all, a lot of what's in this ordinance, there's a few things. I do concur with Councilor Bacon that I feel the language is a bit strong. When I read some of the, the contractor shall, there's a lot of that in this ordinance. But before we get to the actual ordinance, I would like to share with you that a lot of what is in this ordinance, the city already addresses in the contract. And I feel there's opportunity to take some of what the intent is in the ordinance and potentially beef up our contract, because that becomes a binding legal document that's enforceable. As it relates to construction, both 149, 30, 39M, prevailing wages are required whether it's $1 or $1 million on the job. We provide the prevailing wage statements by statute in the bid documents. So if there's a bid, the prevailing wage statement is included in the bid documents. We've created an invitation to bid, which is basically the ground rules of what a particular bid may look like. And it lays out all of the applicable statutes, which include prevailing wages, which include OSHA certificates, Corey, DEP, federal and state requirements, the insurance, including workman's comp, and everything under section 26 and 27. This information is brought to potential bidders right out of the box. So they are aware that when they receive the bid documents, these are the terms of the contract. And it's very specific, laying out everything that we could include, so all of the potential bidders are on equal footing. This has been a work in progress over the period of years. I've taken contracts and documents from other communities to try to really strengthen what we have contractually, and I feel like we're on really solid ground compared to other communities. I've read some of the other communities' contracts, and I feel like, we've made some changes and updates and things, and I feel we're in good stead in terms of trying to stay within the state statutes under the bidding laws. So with that said, under this invitation to bid, everybody who gets a copy of the documents are aware of what the ground rules are, including prevailing wages, the various certificates, and other technical information that are in the bid documents. As part of the contract, we have what's called required forms. And again, I'm going to say that I think the city's doing very well in terms of what we're asking the potential bidders to reply with their actual price statement. So required contracts are included with all bids going out, as well as contracts. Some contracts don't require a bid because you can get quotes, but we're following 30B, and so what triggers a contract on the city is any purchase above $10,000. As part of that, we include a weekly payroll and records report statement of compliance as it relates to mass prevailing wage. We have an attestation that the vendor signs stating that they will pay prevailing wages. We provide the Massachusetts Weekly Certified Payroll Report Form, which is not as in-depth to what is in the ordinance. The ordinance flushes out a bit more, as I read gender, race, females, folks of color, et cetera. So what's being asked in the ordinance is stronger than what the state has given us.
So that,
I thought we took that
we
out.
took that out. So I don't
Okay,
know.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at, I'm just looking, I'm responding and working off what Jeffrey sent me last week,
Oh,
so
it's still in.
my apologies if.
No, it's still there. I
Okay,
see
thank you.
it.
So we provide the weekly payroll form. There's a statement of compliance that every person who receives the documents, bid documents, or is under contract gets this, and they're required to sign off on this sheet and submit their payroll with their invoices. So they're attesting to doing this. So this comes in to the city with their invoices. In terms of insurances, we have strong language that outlines the liability limits, and that include liability, that includes automobile, as well as workman's comp coverage, which is covered under Mass General Law 152. This is given to folks that, when we have bids and with contracts. And to help the vendor along, we've provided a sample certificate of liability insurance. So this is all collected before we issue the purchase order. So we're trying to do a couple things to help the vendor understand what we need and give them the tools so they understand how to indemnify the city and what the thresholds for coverages are. We also include a debarment disclosure form, which covers both city and federal, a corporate affidavit form, and then there, as part of that, there is a section where we can capture if it's a minority-owned business or a women-owned business, so we're capturing this data with contracts and with bids. We include a tax certification form, a certificate of non-collusion, OSHA and training certification.
And let me just make sure I understand this properly. So all these documents that you're talking about now, they are already required by the state per our contracting and bidding requirements, right? So what we're looking at here with the wage theft ordinance is not so much the creation of new reports, but the collection of data and the ability, you're collecting the data. So we want to be able to have a place where that is held in the city, which is, again, as far as I understand, something we're already doing. And basically, you're demonstrating to us all the information that we are already collecting.
Correct.
The wage theft is just a way to say, these are the things we want you to comply with. Here's who's going to be the person who is collecting that information in the city. And if you fail to meet these requirements that are already outlined by the state, here are the repercussions. So really, what this wage theft ordinance is looking at is only sort of the tail end. That's the only thing that's different in terms of here's what the repercussions are going to be. So if you're getting a tax incentive or tax credit of any sort from the municipality, and you're found to be a wage thief, then here are the repercussions.
Okay,
I have a question.
so, okay.
I mean, am I correct in the way that I understand this? We identify somebody in the city that's collecting the information, and then we're saying here's the repercussions and impact at the local level.
So you could have, right now, as it stands with what we're doing, this information is already in the city.
Yes.
Okay. So the concerns that I have is, you know, all of the prevailing wages and all of this comes under the Attorney General's office. And I feel like the state should be helping municipalities along and giving us some guidance or an attestation form, okay? Because as it relates to prevailing wages, the compliance piece on the city is we have to provide the wage schedules to the contractor. They submit and we pass the invoice. In terms, that's as far as the compliance piece is dictated by the state to municipalities. So we provide prevailing wage schedules. We're responsible to ensure that all bids reflect the prevailing wages and that contractors would have to demonstrate their ability to pay that. So as I look at it, the Attorney General has sent this guide to awarding authorities as it relates to prevailing wages. In my mind, we are compliant with that. This feels to me, you're peeling back the onion a little bit because potentially you want to look, how are you going to look for wage theft?
We don't have to look for it. We need to collect the data so that if there is a case if there's a complaint that's raised, we have the ability to be contacted by the Attorney General's office and provide essentially the data that they're looking for.
Okay, so we have that data already.
But we don't have the repercussion for if there is a case of wage theft found. And that's really the sort of meat and potatoes of this ordinance.
So when you're, okay, so when
So-
you're, okay,
We shouldn't really be debating with our department.
I'm sorry. So in terms of repercussions, I understand conceptually what the intent is. As I read the language, you've got a compliance piece, you've got some language that I feel that needs to be run by the state, because if we're gonna be holding back payment, and there's a project going, and then there becomes an issue, you've got a contract in play, so you've got a city contract that follows the state, then you have potentially city ordinance, and then coming up with ARPA, then you've got the federal coming in. So I'm trying to wrap my arms around the compliance piece and who's going to enforce that, who's going to manage that, how does that look and work? Those are some of my initial thoughts as I read the language. I don't know if legal has seen this. I think that there's some things that raise some flags in terms of what we can do legally or not. And this is as it relates to the construction piece. As we go to the tax relief and that piece that covers TIFs, that would cover CPA and other things under that particular umbrella, and not necessarily public bidding. There is no bidding law that tells us we have to tell a private developer who may or may not have a contract with an existing general contractor, because I would assume they would, that there's no law that says that a statute through the state, there's no statute that says that these private developers have to have and participate with prevailing wages and everything. Because you're basically under the tax relief program and agreements, you're kind of mirroring the construction bidding. So that would be my first concern is knowing that some of the companies that have received some TIFs, which would be Gateway City, although their TIF is expired, is Aegis, Marcotte, and right now, Tony Whitman has got a TIF. So right now, if this was enacted, somebody would have to tell Mr. Whitman, pull up stakes, you've got to follow this procedure and the laws. Who's going to do that? TIFs are under planning. I can tell you that from the CPA standpoint, the Boys and Girls Club put in a beautiful park. Is the city going to tell nonprofits and private business that they have to follow all of this kind of complex, and it is very complex. Eileen Kavanaugh, that, you've got to hire a contractor and they have to pay wages and they can't be debarred and all that. How does that work? I understand
It's the law,
globally.
right? It's the law to begin with. So Counselor Bacon wants to speak. I think at the end of the day, the ordinance isn't recreating any new laws, except for the fact that it's creating local repercussions.
But the TIF piece is not a law. That's something new. I'm not aware that
That's the only thing that we're looking to do with the ordinance, really. It's the only thing that's created.
And I guess,
And-
okay, so so I guess just, the council would have to just ask, is that something you want to do? You know, because on one end, we're trying to have development and have people come in the city, and yes, we're offering them, some consideration, but who's going to enforce that? You've got the public-private, and where does that go? I would just say that there's potentially a couple scenarios. If a private developer wants to come in and then they have excess things to consider, maybe this person or developer would not look to Holyoke. Or, in the alternative, knowing that they have to do what's required in the ordinance, they may ask for more up front to cover the administrative piece. I'm just kind of weighing from both sides. So, the language, I think could maybe be a little softer in terms of what we're looking for, like Section D, withholding of payment, 5% of the dollar value. How is this going to be calculated? I'm just, because I see the contracts and we're trying just to keep everything, compliant and moving forward. I see that as a challenge. In Section E, you've got some language, sanctions outlined. Contractor shall be equally liable for the violations under a subcontractor. I see where this is going. I just feel like maybe the language could be a little bit more easier to kind of comprehend. You have debarment in here. The state generally debars for 1 year, federal for 3. There's a 5-year in the ordinance. Those are some things that I would like to have a better understanding of, but I think the idea of the tax relief with the private, there's got to be some type of management of those documents, enforcement, compliance comes to mind, and then, again, we get into, well, what if something happens? I mean, whose responsibility is to do that investigation to make sure that these folks are doing what they're supposed to be doing under the ordinance?
So we had a lot of discussion about this at the last meeting. I'll recognize Councilor Bacon, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Clausen and Mr. Payne to address a lot of the issues that you're raising.
Well, I'd like to defer to Terry, who is seeking to be recognized since he's the maker of the order.
Okay, and, you make a lot of valid comments, Lori, and I appreciate them, and you and I had talked about this when I first got back on city council, 2019, when I was a young man.
Younger by the day, Mayor.
A couple of things. I understand, and I agree with a lot of the things you're saying, is I understand, and my goal here is not to make it difficult for contractors, but to make it so that contractors have the same obligation and there is a fairness in terms of how employees are treated. And that is not, while we would have the contracts, we would, in this case, if it's a municipal construction contract, obviously, I don't expect you or someone else in the city to be going out, but there would be a complaint filed, as I understand it, that would eventually go to the Attorney General's office. They would take the complaint, and then the information that we've collected would be compared against what the complaint is providing. And then, if in fact that information said, they don't have a workers' comp, they don't provide workers' comp, or they're claiming these people are not employees, or whatever the case, or they're not paying minimum wage, or whatever, then it would be the city's obligation at that point to take action against the contractor. And I can see a little bit of the difference with the TIF. And one of the things, I would kind of be inclined to make the language a little less long. But even in that case, because they're getting it and they're going to be working, while they're not necessarily under a city contract for the construction, they're under a city contract to get this break. So I think there is some obligation for them, again, to live up to the requirements. And the general contractor has to be aware of what the subcontractors are doing or not doing. And when I first started looking at this, I thought, how many times can this happen? But I've actually had people that have come to me who have worked with some contractors or subcontractors and told me. So that's why I refiled it, because I've had people coming to me saying, this is what happened to me personally. And I didn't get paid for 3 or 4 or 5 months when I was supposed to be getting paid weekly. So those are violations, and all I'm looking for, if this goes to the Attorney General and they find justification that the contractor has violated state law and violated the employee's rights, that we are in a position to take action. What that action could be, maybe it shouldn't be 5 years. Maybe it should be more, what'd you say, federal was 3? Maybe those kind of things can be considered. But I think the merit of making sure contractors follow the rules is good, not only for other contractors who are following the rules, but obviously more important to me, that it's fair to the employees who are doing the work. And that's the goal behind it. And as I told you, trying to figure out how we administer it locally is a concern. And you and I have had conversations about the amount of work that's going on right now and how difficult we're having to balance that. So I'm very sympathetic to that, as you know. But that's my goal, is just to make sure that whatever we put forward, if a complaint is filed, we have the data so that the Attorney General's office can follow it. Here's the trail. This is what's happened. This contractor is in violation. And then we, and I would assume it would come from room 1 and law department, or probably your office, would say, this contractor, we're no longer giving them a contract, or we're suspending it, or whatever the case might be. And it would be, I would hope, based on the merits or the demerits, depending on how we want to look at, of the violations. So that's my goal behind this. And I'm certainly not trying to create additional burdens, bureaucratic burdens or anything like that. I'm just trying to make sure that anybody doing business with Holyoke recognizes that there's a right way and a wrong way. And if you do it the wrong way, we don't want to do business with you.
And so if we already have the data, which I think everybody agrees, then why would we need the ordinance?
Counselor Bacon.
Thank you. So what would be very helpful to me is if I could have a copy of those documents in the packet that you're referencing, because I don't believe we've had that before us. So we were kind of operating in a situation where we didn't know what we were already doing and what data we already were collecting. Okay, so that would be very helpful. Based on what you've reported out tonight, from a general perspective, I would tend to agree that we do not need yet another ordinance in the ordinance books that we yet again don't enforce, because we have a terrible track record on that. However, if there are pieces of this that would make sense to add to what we're already doing, rather than, this goes way deeper. This talks about weekly payroll, weekly documentation. I don't even think you do that for city employees, what we're asking for contractors to do in the language I'm looking at right here. And we had a lot of discussion at our last meeting. Stuff was supposed to come out, but all the same stuff is before us tonight that was here the first time we talked about it. So we're kind of at square one. So I think it would be very helpful to have that, and I would also like to refer this to legal to look at in terms of what kind of liability we're opening up the city for. We can't insert ourselves into the state level of matters, but we could certainly have an ordinance that says we will actively support any investigation of reported wrongdoing relative to a city contractor or a contractor receiving tax considerations, right? I mean, we could do something like that. I think we could write a very simple ordinance to accomplish what your goal is. This is,
Potentially.
There's just a lot that
This
I
is-
think I would really defer to legal in terms of, if we execute a contract and the contractor's liable under the terms of the contract we execute, and something goes bad down the line, it would be helpful to know what the remedy would be. I would say that, I don't know when these complaints get to the Attorney General, if they're at the beginning of the project, the middle, or the end. There's a complaint, and then there's an investigation, and all the while, the work's getting done. I do know by statute, we have to award a contract to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. And so I've added a little bit of what a responsible bidder is. A while ago, we had some issues with contractors not paying outside police detail, so I added it in as another set of criteria. I think some of this could be put into this notice of bidders as what we're going to identify right off the top, what is a responsible contractor or vendor. They have to be, and pull some of this here.
If
I get nervous
Yes.
with some of the responsible for project compliance, who's in the city, who's going to do that. I don't see this when I read this, honestly, Mayor. I read this, I didn't see it as, we're just going to have a place to hold the documents and the data. I don't see anything at all that says that this is the intent of the ordinance. The intent, as I read it and have read all the Mass General Law, is very, I feel, a little bit strong in terms of the contractor shall. Again, we want them to, but I can't do a contractor's payroll and making sure that they are identifying their employees properly. I know this all gets triggered with a complaint, but then you have a process.
Right.
And the state dictates, if you're on the debarment list, you're out.
Right, so I think at the end of the day, all of the stuff that's in the beginning here, you said we're collecting it all already, so this becomes like a checklist for the things that we would be collecting as outlined by the contract. So it's like, it's a checklist of sorts for what we're going to expect the contract to include. I mean, you changed your contract on your own, right? You just sort of noted the way that you're able to change some of the contract language to include like the police details and payment, right? So this is at least creating like a higher level checklist via the ordinance to say, these are the things that you're going to be expected to comply with. It's all required by the state anyhow, but it allows us to say this is what's going to go into the expectations of the contract.
well, except that some of this is exceeding the state that we've put in here.
I think there's some things in terms of holding back, there's escrow accounts, there's all of this if there's an issue, and so.
And that is what's new. That is what's new,
Right.
the
And
point
so-
of if there is an issue.
And I would just say maybe, to have legal look at it, because I think there are some conflicts between the state and what we can do in terms of payment and things that just seem, a little bit, more strict than we need.
Right, so this is probably a point to allow the folks from 336 to comment. We do also have Aaron Vega in queue. I do want to just note that you're being recognized, Mr. Vega. But the language here is passed in multiple other communities and has passed sort of a legal review at the state level as well. So I'll turn it over to Lisa and Charlie that might be able to start there and speak to some of those points as well as some of the other issues you raised.
Thank you, Counselor.
You
Thank you,
just
Mayor.
state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Clausen with the Carpenters Union. I live in Northampton, and our union is based in Springfield and covers all of Western Mass. A couple different pieces, because lots of issues raised. Similar to what Councilor LISI said, this puts into law some practices that it seems that the city is already doing, which is terrific. But there changes of administration, changes of staffing means that the contract, what's required of contractors can change. And so this puts it in law that the contracting department has to follow that. As referenced, it's passed in 13 communities now. Chicopee just last week passed a very similar ordinance. And there have been no legal challenges to these ordinances. They are essentially saying you can't cheat workers and then continue to get contracts with the city. And unfortunately, Councilor Vacan, even though it's, there's already language around not being debarred and, no debarred contractor can get it, a contractor can cheat its workers, not pay its workers, and also cheat the taxpayers by not paying taxes, payroll taxes on those workers or workman's comp, and still be a contractor in good standing and still not get debarred from the state or the federal government from contracts. And so this is just saying then on the repercussions that it gives the city of Holyoke an opportunity to investigate it if it happens on one of the jobs that you guys have funded, where you're using taxpayer dollars to do it, to be able to look at and investigate and have some repercussions. What it's happened in other cities in terms of work and how it gets enforced is we understand that most communities do not have the extra resources to go and investigate and do, chase after the compliance of it. The way it works is generally it's been a one-page affidavit that is added to the paperwork that a new contractor gets, where they are signing off that they have not had a wage theft problem over the last few years, a problem that's been, not that it's been somebody's claimed wage theft, but that a government agency has found wage theft to exist, that they've not had a sustained complaint on it. And then they're signing that, and then that's getting filed away, and then they're providing the payroll, which they have to do already, certified payrolls for a contract. The added payrolls is, on tax relief, yes, they do not have to currently provide those certified payrolls. But when somebody's giving tax relief out, the state law says a local community can put whatever stipulations they want on it. And so it's just adding that certified payrolls have to be submitted like it would have been if it was a city contract. Other communities have put things like you have to give money to the Parks Department for every tax break you get, or you have to pay a certain higher minimum wage. Different communities have added different components across the state. And in a number of communities, they've added this component that they have to adhere to not having cheated their employees in recent times. So it's a one-page affidavit. It's filing those payrolls when they come in. And then if some outside, some people come forward and say they were cheated on a project that had wage theft, or some organization like a carpenters union or someone else says, here, we've got workers who were cheated on it, who are coming forward, it would allow the state or federal agency to investigate that wage theft. And then if it's found that it's substantiated, that wage theft did occur, then it turns over to the administration, the council, to be able to decide, okay, do we want to put in any of these repercussions? And those are all, and it doesn't, that it's then up to the city to decide, given what happened, what's the right recourse to take on it. And one of those recourses being that they're not going to be able to get City of Holyoke work in the future for a certain amount of time. And that's what's passed in other communities. It's not then resulted in extra work for the contractor to administer it, other than submitting the payrolls, which they, on public work, they have to do anyways. On a private job, then they have to do the payroll anyways. It's an easy form that then their payroll person then adds on the information and sends in, and it gets filed away. Usually it comes in electronically. Sometimes it comes in as a paper file that the city would then file away in case it needs to be investigated in the future. The Attorney General has come out in support of municipal wage theft ordinances. Her chief of the Fair Wage Division has sent a letter to Amherst when they were taking it up, sent a letter to Waltham when they were taking it up recently, saying that this is an added tool to address what is a major problem, unfortunately, in our construction industry. And getting back to the mayor's point around the purpose of this ordinance in the first place, it's about leveling the playing field. You know, contractors that follow the rules, that pay their employees, that pay their taxes, should not be undermined by some contractor that's coming in that's cheating workers and cheating on taxes. It's a patriotic thing that, you know, that we should have this level playing field for it. And so that's what the aim of this ordinance is to do. So I turn it over to my colleague, Charlie.
So I'd like to respond before we go on with since you brought up my name relative to this ordinance, my concern with the ordinance is that, and it reflects in your statement about somebody can look good on paper, but they're still cheating. I mean, we are trying to make our city business friendly. We have a terrible general reputation about being very difficult to do business with as a community, very challenging. And that persists to this day, even though there have been a number of initiatives taken to help to smooth that out and make it more business friendly. This language as it's written does not mirror the intent that you're stating. It goes way beyond the statements that you're making about a level playing field and just wanting to make sure the good guys are okay. This is going above and beyond what we're asking for contractors now as a city. And I'm all in favor of a level playing field. I totally support the mayor's position that he wants to make sure the people that are doing business the right way are the people that keep doing business. But this comes across as we're sort of looking at most people doing it the wrong way. And I want us to be couching our ordinances and our words and our actions in a way that is embracing the good guys and holding the people that try to wiggle through accountable without coming across as not business friendly. And so I think we have a ways to go with this language. And I really look forward to getting the information from our purchasing department, which I think we can do a side-by-side. And that single-page document that you're referring to, I assume says that they'll comply with all the ordinances. This language goes way beyond equal playing ground that is in front of us tonight. So I think we should just work it forward and let legal take a look at it too and come back with us and look at the final ordinances that some of the other communities have put through, because I don't think this language is in them. So it would be helpful, I think, for us to see a couple other examples also. Thank you.
So I just want to remind you that this is what's passed in other communities, and in fact, there were other stronger language around specific groups and the diversity requirements. So I do want to continue to recognize Mr. Payne, name and address for the record, and then Councilor Vega, and I'm sorry, Aaron Vega.
Charlie Payne, I live in Chicopee. I'm a business rep for the Carpenters in Western Mass. Something that we didn't bring up or we haven't really talked is you can have a certified, DCAM certified contractor. He hires numerous subcontractors on a job, and there's a bunch of scopes of work where the contractor, the drywall in particular, the finished carpentry, doesn't have to have a DCAM certificate. They don't, it's not bid separately, it's bid through the GC. You're putting the GC on notice that if someone cheats, you're not going to be able to hire that person. I don't think that's a huge lift. If they've got, I sat in Chicopee City Hall last week and spoke on an ordinance. As a matter of fact, there was a contractor that got caught cheating while working on Chicopee City Hall, was immediately terminated, and the general contractor took over their portion of the work. I went and did some research. Chicopee's only given out 2 failing grades in the last 5 years to a DCAM, on a DCAM job, and that same contractor worked on both of those jobs. So when somebody cuts corners with the payroll, they're cutting corners somewhere else on the job. I also like to point out that you can be DCAM certified and be found not responsible. If I don't want to do the research, but if you look up the AG bid protest decisions, you'll see a company called CTA that filed a protest because they were DCAM certified, I think, to do $140 million worth of work on a single job, and the city found them not responsible. They protested that to the Attorney General, and they haven't decertified this company, they haven't debarred them, but they found in favor of the city to say, yes, this is not a qualified contractor, or not a responsible contractor. We know how fast the wheels move at the state level. People can do a lot of damage to the city and to workers by the time they get, the DCAM catches up to them. We've had people that got decertified by DCAM, sued DCAM, got recertified. 6 months later, DCAM chose not to recertify them. And in the meantime, and you can look this up, Sally West Flooring did a lot of bad work. A lot of people got hurt. And TIFs, you guys may think that Holyoke has the reputation for being unattractive to business. I think you're very attractive to business. Business wants to move into Holyoke now. Marijuana business in particular is loving the abandoned factories, and they're trying to make changes, but at what cost? If you're giving them a tax break, all you're telling them is don't cheat your workers, or you're going to lose your tax break. Why give them a tax break if they're going to cheat on taxes?
We're not doing TIFs for marijuana, are we?
No, we
No.
haven't yet, but we could if we wanted to.
And time again, we've heard, well, how do we get rid of bad contractors? This is giving you a tool to say, okay, you've hired cheaters. If we're going to hire you in the city, you can't use the same cast of characters. If you do, you're not going to get the next contract. And the other thing that was brought up is going back to everybody who's already, I would assume all your contracts and all your TIFs are grandfathered.
I would
This
think
would be
so.
on, going forward. I mean, that's just my assumption, but
Yep.
that's it for me. But I could say I visited a lot of jobs, talked to a lot of people, and it's really the little people that get hurt. They get hurt the most. And it's usually people that can at least afford to miss a week's pay, day's pay, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll recognize Mr. Vega from our Office of Planning and Economic Development, and then per Councilor Vacan's suggestion, we might start to make a list of what we want to see at the next meeting. Mr. Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. So just a couple of quick comments. I was not prepared for, we weren't asked to speak on this order per se, so just it was brought to my attention, so I just want to make a couple of quick comments. Obviously, I concur 100% on the wage theft issue and subcontractor issue. Back when I was a city councilor on the senior center building committee, learning a little bit about procurement and the sort of regulations, it was very frustrating to know that we couldn't get the history if there were issues for bidders. So that was, a lot of the history and any complaints weren't privy to us. So that is an issue, and I think that is definitely a good fix. But I have to speak pretty strongly against any additional regulation, reporting, or onerous agendas on TIFs, and which is TIFs and ties, which are one of the only tools we have in our toolbox for a business sensible look at what we're doing in downtown. And that tool, if a developer is going to end up not saving, the percentage that needs to be saved to make, we only use these tools when it's really necessary to fill the gap. We're not giving them away. We're never giving away to cannabis companies. So I want to make sure that is not the intent. There's never been an ask from a cannabis company for any kind of tax break. So I want to make sure that is not at all thought of to be something that this office is in support of or has done. But again, one of the only few tools we have in the toolbox to attract businesses and small developers as well. And so putting that additional reporting just would be onerous. And other than that, I would just say, again, not being well versed in the proposal, any sort of, and it sounds like there's a misunderstanding and once it gets figured out, but just knowing of being in City Hall, putting any more workload on this current capacity is at limits, so until we get more support in places like purchasing or office development, taking on additional reporting or anything like that, following up is just going to be more of a challenge. And it's not worth having ordinances on the books that we can't enforce. So I think, again, the wage theft issue, 100% support it, making sure that subcontractors could be held accountable to their history, or at least have that history available to cities when they're bidding on projects, I think would be good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks. And just to be clear, Mr. Vega, that's exactly what the ordinance says. So there's, again, no additional requirements. It's just outlining what we already are requiring and then asking for repercussion if we do give out a tax incentive and we find somebody is found guilty of wage theft, that we're going to take that TIF back. So it really creates an incentive for compliance. So right now I see that we have 3 things that we're looking for right now. We want legal to review this language.
We want the package from
The
Lori.
package
so
from
we
Lori.
compare what we have to what the ordinance says.
I'm reluctant to, I think we want to just get to a point where we're wrapping this up because I don't think we're making any more progress on it tonight. So I just want to figure out what we need to compile to move forward.
May I just say one statement, just in terms of other considerations? I looked at the Attorney General's enforcement report. It covers 3 years. There's been 1,041 actions by the Attorney General's office of contractors. Of that, 505 were deemed to be non-intentional. They did cover some of the issues that we were talking about. So, and then the balance was 536 with intent. So if we're going to have conversation and start looking at contractors, I think it's important to clarify if it's intentional or not. Because at the end of the day, I like to think that I'm fairly intelligent, but the prevailing wage statements are really difficult. There's a lot of exemptions and things of that sort. So, and I will say that I've looked at the 5 lists, Debarment list that's noted. There's no red flags that I have seen with our current contractors and contracts. I think a lot of the issues here are east of Worcester in terms of location and some of the contractors. So I think that just should be part of the discussion as well, if we're going to be penalizing potentially, contractors.
Hopefully not. Hopefully
I hope not, but I mean,
the incentive,
and then who makes that determination?
I think the incentive to comply should allow us to avoid having to punish anyone. Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, I'd just like to make sure that we put in, so we're basically, the data's collected, but we're basically going to react to a decision from the Attorney General's office. Like if in this particular case, there were 540 that were unintentional, clearly, I look at it that would be a non-action that we would take automatically because it's been designated as unintentional, and now they've made the correction. However, the ones that are intentional, and this is where I like to make sure in the ordinance itself, it was that when we get a report from the Attorney General's office deeming that this contractor or subcontractor has deliberately violated whatever, then Proposition D and Proposition E in the ordinance would allow us, it doesn't require us, but it does allow us to create some sanctions. But, and I think it's important that we recognize that and that they recognize it. If in fact it was a minor incident, deliberate but minor, obviously the sanction is going to be far less, but there would be a warning there. But if it's serious and and clearly intentional to violate workers' rights, then the city would be in that position to take aggressive action. My speculation, unless we had a consistent case of a contractor clearly having violations, and certainly the Attorney General's office would be in a position to say, well, yeah, we've had problem with them in Worcester, we've had problem with them in Brockton, and now we're having problems with them in Holyoke. Clearly, that's not a contractor that we want to have. And therefore, these sanctions would be, I would assume, the sanctions, we would want the most aggressive sanctions as possible. But if it's a first-time offense and somewhat minor, I would think we may do, it's sole discretion of the city. We don't have to do anything, but it does let those contractors know that we can't. You would be the enforcer only because they would no longer be eligible to do contracts if we went that far. Other than that, you're already collecting the data as it is. So I would see us reacting from a ruling from the Attorney General's office saying this contractor is in violation and it is their intent to be in violation, as opposed to, they made an innocent mistake. So that's my goal. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that, and again, I go back to, I guess, my old coaching playing days. Let's have the field be equal. Don't have the umpire ruling for that team because they like them better.
And I would just say that our enforcement authority is with the contract,
Yeah.
whether it's a DCAM contract or city contract. If it goes to ordinance, then I'm not sure who handles what, and that's kind of where I'm looking.
There's no, the ordinance only creates that process to take away a TIF or other tax incentive if there is a finding by the Attorney General's office. Other than that, it's creating a checklist for what we want the contract to include.
But I just think
Well,
we need to make that more.
Except that isn't what the language says. The language says under D, if they don't comply at the sole discretion of the city, we will do this, this, and that. This ordinance does not say that we're waiting for the Attorney General.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm
let me
saying that we should
fix
add
that.
the attorney.
That's what
yeah.
you wanted to say.
No, because there's no one creates a finding. No one creates a finding of wage theft except for the Attorney General's office. So it says if there is a finding, if there is a case of wage theft, and nobody else except for the Attorney General's office can declare that there has been an instance of wage theft.
Then we need to say that clearly.
Yeah,
in the
I'd be
ordinance
fine.
language,
Sure,
'cause it is not clear at all.
Thank you. So we have had Attorney Degnan on this conversation. Attorney Degnan, do you think you're in a position, based on what you've heard this evening, to review the present ordinance draft and suggest some places where we might make things more clear around finding of wage theft, and also I think that's it. I can't think of anything else.
I can take a look at the ordinance, taking in all the considerations that have been made this evening, and with an eye for trying to resolve any issues, or it depends. I haven't seen it yet, so it's hard for me to say anything definitively. But yes, I'm in a position to look over the ordinance.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that.
You're welcome.
Council Bartley.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry a little bit late, but I want everybody to know I tried the new place on South Street, Tiano, and it's fantastic. So there you go. So I met the owners, and it was really great. I'm going to reiterate a couple things here that I said the last meeting. One, I want to have, and hopefully Attorney Degnan can, through the chair to Attorney Degnan, Attorney Degnan, you can look at this language, and that's great, and you can compare it to other municipalities, and that's great. But I think we've got to get some perspective from the business community. We've got two people, well-respected, the acting mayor, well-respected. I'm not going to say this is a solution in search of a problem, but I want to, I don't know what kind of issues we've had arise, Attorney Degnan, to prompt this kind of legislation. But I want to hear, I'm not saying it's on you, and I respect Mr. Vega's input that he likes this, and that's great. But I want to hear from Mr. Vega, I want to hear him talking to the business community about this. I'm not really interested in it respectfully in his own personal opinion. I want to hear what people in the business community, with the Chamber of Commerce, other business people, contractors, vendors who are going to be directly impacted by this. I want to hear what does they have to say. And if you want to present this gargantuan ordinance to them and not expect them to get billed, I suppose that's a whole separate question. This is a lot of verbiage and a lot of complicating factors, and it's completely one-sided. Now, that's fine, but that's not how it happens. I mean, at least in theory, that's not how it's supposed to happen. We're supposed to hear from both sides of an issue and come to some kind of a common ground. And to date, despite my humble pleadings, I don't think we've had that. We didn't have it the last time when we were here in May, and we sure don't have it now. So I'm hopeful that, respectfully, through to Ms. Degnan, that you can maybe go above and beyond, or Mr. Vega could maybe go above and beyond, and so we get some direct feedback. Whether if they don't want to be in the chambers, okay, fine. But we need to hear from the business community, and not just, not just councilors, not my perspective, not other, a little more, I'm not going to characterize it, just people that maybe want a more balanced view. So I would just humbly ask the committee to look at that, think about that a little bit, and the department heads to think about that, and let's come to a reasonable, fair, common ground so that we can move this thing forward that helps the city as a whole. That's all I want to do. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that this item be, let's see, Councilor Hernandez.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just want to add quickly that, I agree with most of everything that has been discussed tonight, but I also want to firmly state that the reason that this is coming along and that so many other sister towns are implementing this and adhering to it and adopting it is because there has been wage theft, obviously. And the people that are most affected are the small people at the short end of the stick, right? And people that most of the times are not, in a position, or they feel afraid of coming forward because of fears of retaliation, and they continue to get abused by these contractors. So I think that I am in favor of moving forward with adopting this and adding this and making sure that our city of Holyoke enforces it, because of the people at the short end of the stick that always, are affected by this. I want to make sure that there is a level playing field and that we don't have to wait for a problem to arise to move forward with better practices. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
We're really trying to wrap up this item. We just created a list of issues that we want to have for the next time we take it up. So I'd like to entertain a motion that we table this for now.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded to table, not up for this debate. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Okay. I have to remember that.
Thanks so much for coming in, everyone. The next item on our agenda is a continued public hearing. Item number 2.
I'd like to make a motion that we take up item number 2 up. Item number 2.
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 2. All in favor?
In the public hearing. Second.
And open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this is a public hearing that is being continued from 8:31. This is that the marijuana ordinance be amended to correct 1, the site plan review process section in 710.6.5B, and 2, the reference table to table 4.3 of principal uses in 710.5.3A. Just to recap from the 31st, there was a change made to our marijuana ordinances. We made 5 different changes. It seems that in the different versions that were circulated when we were meeting exclusively online, that version that was passed into ordinance had 2 typographical errors in it. The order that I filed was to correct those typos, and the way that this item was posted publicly referenced just those corrected items. But folks came in at the last public hearing to raise some more substantive issues related to section 4.3, principal uses in particular. And we're continuing that discussion tonight.
So I just have a point of information.
Yep.
Or a question, actually. The planning board closed their public hearing at the last hearing, did they?
Mr. Vega, can you speak to that point? Did the planning board close their public hearing?
No, they continued it to this evening. They did discuss it, and then they continued it again. So there was not a quorum. There was only 3 members to this evening, so they had a little bit of conversation, and it just continued it.
Okay, so we don't have
12.
any feedback yet. Okay, thank you.
I have a little bit of an update, but there's nothing formal. But
I just wanted to know where we were in the process. Thank you.
Just a point of order,
Yes.
just through the chair, Aaron, how did they have, did you say they didn't have a quorum?
They had 3 people, so they didn't have any public hearing. They didn't open up their public hearings.
Okay, so there was no discussion. I mean, they had no quorum, so they couldn't take it off the table.
No.
I heard you say they
They
discussed it.
have quorum, but they don't have the voting quorum because every member of the planning board must be present for them to be able to have discussion of an item that's been taken up previously.
Right, so they couldn't do the public hearing.
So there's no discussion.
They couldn't. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to understand where we were. Thank you.
Okay.
So given that it's a public hearing, we should invite members of the public to speak in favor or against the proposed typographical changes. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? There's one person. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Let me know if there's anyone online. Make sure the microphone is on. Slide the button up towards you.
John Aubin, 42 Clinton Avenue. I guess my glasses are going to fog up. So I attended last time, as well as a number of tenants of Open Square, and so I don't want to repeat that. I will say that the ordinance as written was as voted on. It was not a typographical error. If you go back to the video of the meeting minutes, it was actually read word for word the way it is. But regardless, I do understand that it was not intended that way. So at the last meeting, we brought the concerns of the health issues and a couple of other issues. So I did want, if it's possible, to enter into the record the study of the potential health issues of VOCs and low-lying ozone on the community, as well, in addition to the more obvious issues of noxious odors that are unpleasant for residents and businesses. The second thing I wanted to point out was, I know on this agenda tonight, there are requests to recommend several special permits. I'd like to point out that the current zoning doesn't allow the uses under the requested special permits. And I would point out that from my perspective, it does not seem particularly transparent or democratic to try to push forward special permits when the current zoning does not actually allow it. Finally, I'd like to point out that in 2 of the cases, the locations which would be within 200 feet of other businesses, residential, retail, and other commercial uses that the city is trying to promote through Connect, Construct, and Create, our business plan, our economic development plan, would conflict with that, would be in conflict with that. So I didn't have time to do the visuals on both of them, but I would also like to submit at least one of them, which is the Main Street building. I believe it's called the Baustein building. And what I'm presenting is a plan from the city with, in red, the Baustein building, and in blue, it is the proposal for the Carlos Vega houses and the proximity. What I forgot to outline is also a residential multifamily building directly behind that proposed grow facility.
Is that the 4048 or the 532? 532.
532. I have extra copies
Thank you.
if you want a visual on it.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to point out sort of the 2 primary conflicts between the economic development plan and the urban renewal plan of Connect, Construct, Create, and marijuana manufacturing and growing. The first is obviously residential with the potential health hazards. I think we've seen in the past poorer communities, particularly poorer neighborhoods throughout the country, seem to suffer greatly from unregulated industries that cause ill health effects. And in this case, there's a planned development that's clearly in the crosswinds of this particular first one. And there are also residential development in the same close proximity to the second project, which is close to Open Square on Main Street, just north of Hotel Jess. The city is trying to promote and is spending money and time and seeking incentives and government funding for housing at the Hotel Jess. There are other residents already in that block. The triangular building, I can't remember the name of it, across the street is also prime development space for mixed use. In addition, Open Square, I haven't measured yet, we are actually fairly close as well. And this is a growing district. That particular area is a gateway to the economic development urban core. And I, again, would ask very simply, are there any members of the city council or the ordinance committee who would buy a home next to a marijuana grow facility when the most deep-pocketed facilities are unable to control the smell? Would anyone have any of their friends or family live next to a facility where there are potential health hazards? Would you shop in a store next to one? I mean, I think the conflict is clear. At the last meeting, it was my understanding that the planning board and the planning department was going to study this. So it's very disappointing to see that time is being wasted trying to push back the clock and potentially damage a brand new residential neighborhood that hasn't even broken ground yet. Existing residents right behind the building or next to the building, and commercial development that is starting to happen in the neighborhood, for example, of Dwight Street. It just, I'm baffled that the time isn't being spent studying the issue we proposed last time an alternative, which was the 200-foot buffer for other uses for manufacturing only. And again, I want to emphasize, this is not retail. Retail does not produce the odors or the potential health hazards of manufacturing. So this growing, we proposed, have a 200-foot buffer except for specific manufacturing or except for manufacturing, storage, and a few other items. There's other ways to rewrite this to make sure that it is not blocking other acceptable adjacent uses, but basically residential, office, retail, hospitality. There is no place in zoning that is looking after the health of its citizens and the health of its local economy for marijuana manufacturing adjacent to these uses. And we don't need it. We've got growers in industrial areas already. There's still growers and opportunities in industrial areas. And I would just ask that either a moratorium or, as I said, I'm fine with that buffer zone, as I assume many people would be. But even that, it's critical that the city council give the planning board and the planning department the resources to study this issue, which has such a great effect on the people of Holyoke. So at the very least, passing a reasonable buffer of 200 feet, I think it would not be unreasonable to discover on close study, that many uses like residential probably should be 500 feet. Again, the proof is already there if you go to the large growers in Holyoke, the large growers in Easthampton. And the one thing I will repeat from the last time is that our wedding venue, our event venue, has already had at least one customer who came from Easthampton because they went to visit a banquet facility in Easthampton and they could smell marijuana. So I just request that this motion not be passed as it exists without further study, or an alternative be passed that respects the economic development, urban development plan for Holyoke, connect, construct, and create, and also respects the citizens of Holyoke, the businesses, the small businesses that are existing, and in particular, the residents in the poorer neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It seems that we have some folks online who want to be recognized to speak for a public hearing. I'm looking, I believe it's Jim Valeriani.
Correct.
Your full name and address for the record, please.
Okay, can you hear me, Madam Chair?
We can, yes.
Very good. My name is Jim Valeriani with the Metzing Group, 100 State Street in Boston. I'm here for a marijuana application that's in front of this committee in just a bit, H&H at 4048 Main Street. And I can assure you, I will not take as much time as that last speaker to get my point across.
Madam Chair, do you want to suspend rules to allow somebody from outside the city to speak, or is this just going to be a free-for-all?
It's a public hearing?
But I understand that, but he's got to be within the city address. So that's.
No, I don't believe.
Well, I'm
that's
representing a
public
client
hearing.
who has a business in the city.
Counselor, relax. I'm just addressing the chair, not addressing you. So relax. But we're supposed to suspend rules.
I don't believe that's true. It's a public hearing, so any member of the public, this is not our city council rules where you have to be a member of our community to be recognized to speak. It's a full public hearing, advertised in the newspaper. Any member of the public from anywhere can come and speak this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You are correct. I'm hearing that there's some typos in your ordinance that we've relied on for the past year with our client and spend many thousands of dollars in that it only indicates separations from schools. But am I hearing correctly that there's a consideration that would be expanded to separate cultivation from other businesses? Is that what's going on here tonight?
So to be clear, when you look at the marijuana ordinance 71053A, we intended to create a 200-foot buffer for all manufacturing from any location where children congregate, including K through 12 schools and other childcare facilities. But somehow, because of all the Zoom meetings, what got put into its place was the full table of principal uses. So the order that's before us tonight was intended to correct that typographical error.
Okay, well, when I look at your principal use table, it indicates special permit for marijuana facilities in the IG zone, so I don't understand what the issue is there. But I've got the ordinance for marijuana in front of me. I downloaded it from the city's website. The days of going in and getting a city clerk's certification that the zoning ordinance is current are far gone. Everybody relies on what's on the city's website, and all I see is setbacks of 500 feet and 200 feet in some instances for schools and kindergartens, so forth. Now, our client meets that. So if there are going to be any changes to that that could adversely affect our client, we'd want to make sure that nothing comes out of this committee prematurely, since the planning board hasn't finished its review. The way these quote unquote typos were advertised did not provide due notice and therefore due process as to what was going on with these proposed changes. So if the ordinance committee wants to continue to discuss it, that's fine, but nothing can go to the full council until the planning board has finished its recommendation.
Correct, that is correct.
Because we don't want to be in a position where we're scrambling to file an A&R plan tomorrow with the planning board to preserve any rights.
So what you're looking at, I believe, is what we had intended to pass. But one of the departments found that the copy that we passed into ordinance form referenced the full table of principal uses, the full table. So you need a 200-foot buffer from everything else in the table of principal uses, from every other use. That's what we passed most recently in April. And again, that was a typographical error that we're looking to correct tonight.
So the correction would be to state what, just for schools or?
200 feet for any manufacturing use from schools, K through 12 schools and other locations where children congregate. And then 500 feet for retail from, again, K through 12 schools and other locations where children congregate. So it sounds like what you're looking at is correct.
Okay.
It seems.
Well, I'll follow up with the city solicitor if necessary in the planning department, but I can assure you, just based on a recent meeting I had with Blake Mensing out in the town of Ware, using that definition where children commonly congregate, it's no longer part of the CMRs for the commission, and it's incredibly void for vagueness. You just can't put your finger on where children commonly congregate, and marijuana companies will have no idea where they can properly cite their facilities under the special permit process. So I would really suggest the committee be very careful with that. Where children commonly congregate, I would limit it to what the cannabis regulations indicate, the CMRs 935, 500. But with that, I appreciate that. I'm satisfied with what you're trying to undertake, and I appreciate you letting me speak on this matter out of turn.
Thank you. Since we are awaiting recommendation from the planning board, is there a motion then that we continue this? Oh, I didn't see that.
What was the date that Aaron said they went to?
Aaron, I want to recognize you to speak, but also there's a question asking, to what date did planning continue their hearing?
To October 12th.
Thank you. And you want to make a comment as well?
Yep, real quickly, so I did misspeak earlier. It wasn't that there wasn't a quorum for the planning board. There was 3 people. You need 3 people to open for planning board business, also for zone changes. So they did open the hearing and then continued it. It's 4 people for special permit and site plan review. So that's why we couldn't start the 2 that were on the agenda, 2 or 3 that were on the agenda tonight. So just wanted to make sure I explained that correctly. Couple things to consider. At this point, I think it's about moving forward. So whether or not it was a Scribner's error or whatever, this is the ordinance, and we're considering, should it be changed to continue to promote the industry in the way we have been, or are there considerations that should be considered as to restricting it in certain areas? There has been some information passed the planning board and to the mayor's office about a group that does do air quality study and evaluates filtration systems. They've worked with some of the very campus industry that's here in Holyoke and other states. So that information is around. Where we do have a draft, we're working on a map that indicates where all the HCAs are and all the cannabis industries are going to be located. We can use that to see what a 200-foot buffer or 500-foot buffer would do. So the last 2 comments would just be that one thing that's important to note, and I do not have the dates in front of me. This would probably be either your clerk or the city clerk. Depending on when people submitted for the special permit, if their submission for the special permit was before the ordinances were changed, they're under the old ordinance. So just to make that point, and again, I don't have the dates in front of me, so that's a point to consider for the special permits you have before you. I would just put that out there for you. So, but again, the planning board did just decide to continue it, and is open again to the conversation and looking at what the 200-foot buffer would do. And I don't want to speak for the mayor, but we do have other businesses that are coming forward, and there is some, we're not necessarily putting a pause on, but there seems to be a little more discussion regarding the HCAs moving forward on any future projects for manufacturing due to the current ordinance and some of the general concerns. So there is a lot of moving parts. And so as you continue your meeting, we'll try to continue to give you more information as we move forward.
Thank you. So we should work to continue this hearing to a date certain. I'm sorry, one more hand from Paul Payer.
Hi, good evening, Paul Payer, 6 Taylor Street. I'll be brief so that it can be continued to the next hearing so more folks can speak. But I just wanted to express some agreement with Jim. I watched the August 31st public hearing, and I think there was some really good discussion around evolving technology with odor mitigation for cultivation facilities, what municipalities can do to enact reasonable safeguards to address those issues. But I'm surprised tonight to hear, that there's still this notion that a 200-foot buffer zone of any principal use in the city would be permissible. I mean, that would effectively outlaw the operation of marijuana manufacturing establishments in the city, which you can't do without a ballot initiative. And I think to Jim's point, more generally, the history of like DPH with the standard of where children commonly congregate, the legislature said, let's make it simple, 500 feet from a school, unless a municipality adopts a less restrictive standard. And the statute's specific on that. So I think that there's at least a question about whether or not any more restrictive buffer zone would be preempted. So I hope that's taken into consideration. And I hope that by sort of, meting out those issues, there's an opportunity to focus on I think some of the valid points and discussions about what can be done to both support cultivators, these businesses coming to the city, to take advantage of the most advanced technology for HVAC and odor mitigation, while also addressing the concerns of business members in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payer. So I don't believe that we can take this up again on the 12th, so perhaps we should look to the 26th
The 26th?
of October.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to October 26th at 6:30.
Motion has been made and seconded to continue the public hearing until October 26th at 6:30 PM. So that motion was made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. Okay. So moving on to item number 3, we have a special permit for First City Provisions, Inc.
So motion to take up item 3 and open the public hearing?
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 3 and open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. So this is a special permit application for First City Provisions, Inc. for a manufacturing establishment and a recreational marijuana retail establishment at 89 South Street to operate a recreational marijuana retail and manufacturing establishment.
So, Madam Chair, if I can ask just a question of the applicant. So when you give us your overview, if you could let us know if you are within or exceeding a 200-foot buffer relative to your project, or whether it does not apply because you're entirely within the IG, within the 200 feet, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Isaac Fleischer. I'm an attorney here on behalf of First City Provisions Incorporated. We've got a whole team here, some in person, some over Zoom from First City. But first, I'm going to give a brief overview of the special permit application. It is in the general, it's completely in the general industry district. It is also not within 200 feet of a school. It's a, as you said, marijuana manufacturing establishment and marijuana retail establishment. It's going to be located at 89 South Street, which is an existing manufacturing building that is 25,536 square feet. And the vast majority of that is going to be dedicated to the cultivation, or as it's in the ordinance, marijuana manufacturing. That's about 22,000 square feet. And then the retail is going to be about 2,800 square feet, and 1,500 of that is going to be the actual sales floor.
So if I could just
Yes.
ask, is it exceeding 200 feet from residential or other retail or hospitality as well?
I believe it is, but I didn't confirm that. We only
Okay.
looked to see that it's within, that it is outside of the buffer zone from a school.
Okay.
Can I just interrupt there?
Yes.
So I just want to make it clear that this is exactly the typo. So what we wanted to do and what we wanted to include was that all marijuana activities, cannabis activities are allowed in IG only. And what we wanted to do was reduce the buffer from 500 feet to 200 feet within the vicinity of a school for manufacturing alone. And what the table of principal uses in place of that says is that you can't have marijuana located in an IG zone that is 200 feet within any other use. So that's why the problem is there.
Well, that's what I was just checking on, because the way it is right now, unfortunately, is the way it is. But I think in that case, they're entirely surrounded by IG use, so I think they're good.
But
Because-
even the IG use would be another use in the principal uses chart, which is why this prior issue is a problem, and why the question is actually, pretty much irrelevant, because they're meeting the setbacks that we had initially, and that they're governed under based on the time of their application.
So when did they apply?
This one in particular is, 5/20/21.
The application materials say May on them.
Yeah, okay.
That's
I mean, I
when
would
they were
just-
drafted, and
yeah.
I believe that's when they were submitted.
So it's a manufacturing use and a manufacturing use.
Yes,
I'm with you.
yeah, it's in the general industry district, and I know that we're not discussing the ordinance right now, or amending the ordinance right now. But, you know, as we can discuss the impact of marijuana manufacturing, and it really is one of the cleanest possible uses you could be doing within the industry district. There's a number of other uses that are allowed by right that would have a much more substantial impact on environmental quality in that area. But that's not the subject of this hearing. So if there's no more questions on the initial just overview, I'd love to introduce the president of First City Provisions. So Lamont Clemens is the president. He's going to give you a quick overview of the company and its background.
How are you guys doing today?
Good, thank you.
Amazing. I just want to give a brief background about myself and then talk a brief about the company. I'm originally from this area, from the Springfield area. Ended up going to school, got an engineering degree, started off at Stick and got an engineering degree, also got an MBA in finance, another master's in project management, and was blessed to work for a bunch of Fortune 500 companies, and then come back to my home, around the country, and then come back to my home city and really begin to build a bunch of different companies. We were blessed to have built the largest union minority painting company in the state of Massachusetts. That's ethnic, and we actually painted the MGM Casino that's down in Springfield, as well as several other large projects that are in the area. As well, we also have several other businesses that we were blessed to be able to build. I'm a first generation college student, so it's been beautiful to be able to really do some of these things in my hometown, and also be able to see people I went to middle school and elementary school with really thrive in the community and even work for us in certain times. So it's an amazing thing in my eyes. I'm very, very passionate about the community, surrounding community. As you guys know, Springfield is only about 8 minutes from here. Realistically, I did end up finishing school at Cathedral High School quite some time ago in 1995. Fortunately, I'm very, very very proud of a few things I do community-wise. One of them is I'm on the board for the Springfield YMCA. I'm also on the board at Bay Path University as well. I'm on the board for a New Valley Bank and Trust. That was a de novo bank that was founded here in Springfield as well, and also on the board for BECMA, Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, which is really based out of Boston as well. I also am very much so an advocate of not just donating financially, but also donating my time to the community. So if you talk to the Boys Club or Keyshawn Dodds at the Boys Club in Springfield, you'll see myself there, as well as the MLK Community Center. So I just like to really allocate my time. Just kind of want to give a little bit of character of myself, just so you can get a quick snapshot of how we are. Fortunately, we've been blessed to move forward with doing business, move forward with trying to do business in cultivation in the cannabis arena. We feel like it's an arena that we can generally thrive in. Obviously, once it was voted in, we feel like we feel like it's a way to really employ a lot of people, and obviously with the community being negatively impacted adversely for many, many decades through cannabis, now's the opportunity for us to be able to really turn some things around and help some people that were impacted negatively as well, which is in our intent and also in our impact plan that is noted in detail as we submit to the Cannabis Control Commission as well. The name of our company is First City Provisions. We are right there on 89 South Street. Just like Isaac said, it's a 25,000 square foot facility that we're going to basically be doing manufacturing and then have a retail use marijuana site there as well. We were very attracted to this area for multiple reasons. Love the city of Holyoke. My father had some businesses here as well. Moving forward, and I mean back a little bit before I was born, actually, but he's very, very definitely very appreciative of here. And I was actually myself was actually born in Holyoke, but I've lived in Springfield. But so I guess just about our company, we obviously have a serious commitment to the community. We obviously have a serious commitment to really doing everything the right way. Similar to our other businesses that we were able to build, we want to build it on solid foundation, and that's why I think it was really imperative to put together the team that we have. A lot of individuals are on this call, as well as the individuals that are in the room are very, very seasoned individuals with respect to this industry, and as well as with respect to just business in general. So I guess with that being said, that's all I wanted to add.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to have Tim Kuhn from J.R. Russo walk you through our site plan. We've worked with DPW and the City Council and members of the Ordinance Committee as well to make a number of revisions over time to address concerns about traffic and parking. As Tim walks you through it, you'll see how we're taking an existing lot with, I believe, about 15 parking spaces, bumping it up to around 36 or 37 spaces, and improving the traffic flow, moving curb cuts, just making it safer overall. Tim, are you on Zoom?
Yes, I am.
Great.
And I would, if I could share my screen so we could all be looking at the site plans. If that's, let me give that a shot.
You should have the share screen option.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll just start by showing this. This is to answer the earlier question with regard to the location of the site. This is the site at 89 South Main Street, and this gray is the IG zone. So it's just, I just figured I'd bring this up to demonstrate that, yes, we are located completely in the IG zone, and the closest nearby zone that's not IG is over 580 feet away from our building. So I just figured I would point that out. So the subject property, about 1.01 acres, located at 89 South Main Street between Jubenville Street, which is over here on the left of my screen, which is to the west, and South Ray Street, which is over here to the right, to the east. We're also abutted to the north by the Route 391 overpass. There is a one-story brick building that I'm outlining here. It actually has a footprint of about 14,400 square feet, and it's currently vacant. The entire exterior to date all consists of a compacted gravel surface. Okay. And what we are proposing to do, let me just change screens here. This is our proposed layout plan. We are going to essentially renovate the existing building. We'll be demolishing the existing entryway, but the remainder of the building will remain and will be renovated for the future use. We will be creating the parking lot area where there is currently the compacted gravel. This shows provisions for 39 spaces, including 2 handicap spaces, and the zoning requirement would be 19 spaces for the proposed uses at the site. So we more than exceed the requirement for parking. There is currently an existing curb cut on South Ray Street. We're actually going to be shifting that a little bit further to the north, away from the intersection with South Street. We'll be reducing that to a 24-foot curb cut, and we'll be creating a second curb cut off of Jubenville Street. We'll have access from both of these streets to provide better circulation through the site. We will be in areas that are not paved. You'll notice there will be many landscaped islands along both the perimeter and the interior of the parking lot. This is essentially the site right now has no landscaping. It's all packed gravel, as I mentioned. But we will be doing that with trees, shrubs, and landscape islands to increase the aesthetics of the site, both in the parking lots, along the building. And we'll also be constructing sidewalk to connect the existing sidewalks at the adjacent streets to our site entrances. So there'll be sidewalks along the front of the parking lot as well as on the face of the building to our entrances. And we'll also be replacing an existing section of the sidewalk along South Race Street. Let's see.
Mr. Kuhn, you have a question
Yes.
from Counselor Bacon at this point. Do you mind pausing the presentation to take a question?
Sure. Yep, no problem.
So I just wanted to get a sense of, when you were talking about the curb cuts, so will
Yes.
the traffic be going in from South Street and out onto the side streets? Is that the idea?
There's actually no curb cut on South Street, so there'll be no entrance off of South Street.
So-
You can enter the site off of South Race
Okay,
or Jubenville Street. Both of these will be two-way traffic.
okay, so there'll be no entry or exits from South Street at all?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Let's see, we're showing a proposed screened dumpster at the northwest corner of the building, as well as the security gate and sally port for delivery access. We will be improving the site lighting. We're showing 8 pole-mounted lights along the perimeter, and there are also be 10 building-mounted lights around the building. A photometric plan was provided with our application for staff review. It currently slopes from Jubenville Street down to South Race Street, and all the runoff currently runs down to a single catch basin, and I'll just go back to show. It kind of all runs down to a single dry well, if you will, at the east end of the site. And this dry well discharges out to the existing system in the street when it overflows. We are proposing to replace this system with a new, let's go here. A new deep sump catch basin. We'll take out the old dry well, we'll put in a new deep sump catch basin and a brand new subsurface infiltration system. So that we'll be collecting our runoff, it'll be treated, and then it'll be using the subsurface system to recharge it back into the groundwater, the majority of it. And this too will have an overflow to the drainage system in the street. This system has been designed in accordance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Policy Handbook to provide the necessary treatment and groundwater recharge. It has also been sized to meet the city's requirements to reduce peak discharge from the site during the 2- and 10-year storm by 25%. In fact, this system will result in a reduction of runoff leaving the site for the 2- and 10-year storm of 81% and 76% respectively for those storm events. Otherwise, there's existing water, gas, and utilities in the street. The building is currently connected to them. We anticipate using those existing utilities. So that is really essentially it for the site plan.
I'm going to interrupt here, Mr. Kuhn, and just note that the engineer issued a letter, let me just see the date, I'm sorry, September 1st. And in the engineer's letter, they noted that the plans indicate that the existing water and sewer connections are to be used, but no information has been provided to indicate the location, size, or adequacy of these connections to serve the proposed facility. So They are referencing the proposal that was submitted, the application that was submitted on May 21st. So do they have what you're showing us here? Because what I hear you saying is more information than it seems that the engineer was able to glean from the application.
Well, what I believe what the engineer's comment is that the sizes of the existing utilities to the building have, at this point, not been investigated with regard to whether they provide sufficient service for the proposed uses, which, as he mentions in his letter there, that, you know, and we agreed to that this could be a condition of approval once we receive our special use permit, that we will investigate these utilities to verify that they are of adequate size and do that prior to the issuance of the building permit, because really those are more building permit issues anyway.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding this first comment from the engineer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything further to present?
At this point, no, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll turn it back over to Attorney Fleischer.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? I will note that per the planning department's review, all the initial issues that were raised have been responded to by the applicant, and that the planning department is satisfied with those responses. And the only outstanding issues seem to be those that are identified by the engineer. I do also want to just note that I am not feeling so great, and I may need to leave shortly, and Councilor Vacan may need to take over for me if I do need to leave. So are there other questions from committee members online? So seeing none, let's open up the public hearing. Are there members of the public that want to speak in favor or against this project, either here in the chambers or joining us online?
And I will note, if you have called in, the way to be recognized would be by hitting *9 on your phone.
I'm not seeing anyone in favor or against, so I think a motion to close the public hearing is in order.
If I can just ask a couple of questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Just, do we know two things? How many total employees are we talking about potentially, and how many of that relate to the retail part versus the cultivation part?
So right now, we're estimating 10 to 15 total employees. That number is a little in flux, and obviously would be adjusted based on business. And out of those 10 to 15, the majority would be working in the cultivation manufacturing side.
And the hours of operation?
They would be 8 to 8.
And I'm just trying to, I know down, if I go down to Jackson Street on South 3rd Street, there is a retail operation there. And I know there's another business on, I believe it's still a South 3rd Street location. Do you know what the distance from your location to that location is?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, and I'm just going on the basis of the ordinance that we currently have in relation to whether or not this violates it or not, and I don't know.
Well,
there is another business there, so.
The ordinance only says 200 feet from any other use. So it's not about. So the initial map that they showed that the closest neighbor was 589 feet from their building.
That was residential. That was a residential, that was 589 feet away.
Under the current existing ordinance, the only setback requirement is from a school.
No.
No,
Well, that's the
that's,
problem we have.
yeah, that's not what we have now. So, that's what we just tabled, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
That was the one that we held to revisit October 26th. But Madam Chair, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but the ordinance as it was adopted, in error or not in error, right now says it's 200 feet
Between
from
other uses.
from basically other uses. That, so
Right,
that,
but
that's what I'm asking.
But this is being,
It's the same.
this is being reviewed under the ordinance prior to this amendment. Because
Correct.
it was applied for prior to the amendment. Am I mistaken on that?
Yes.
Well, actually, this was submitted the 21st, and I believe that we passed the ordinance on,
I think it was in April.
April, yeah.
I actually just checked, it was May 17th, the Tuesday following May 17th, so it was May 18th.
Then you'll have to update me. We need to be set back 200 feet from every single use within the table of uses? And is that measured building to building or from parcel lines?
Doorway to doorway.
Sorry, what was that?
It's doorway to doorway on the shortest pedestrian route.
Okay, I'm confident that we're not within 200 feet of any other doorway.
I think they're all right.
I think that's the point that I was making.
I
that
think they're all right, though.
They're 589 feet away from the nearest other entity.
Yeah, that wouldn't just be residential, that would be, yeah,
that would be
any,
everything.
Other
there are no other
uses.
doorways within 200 feet of our doorway.
Right.
Right. Anything further?
Yeah, I'll hold for now.
Any other comments from committee members? Seeing that there's none, I would entertain a motion that this hearing be closed.
So moved.
I'll make a second.
Motion is made and seconded that the hearing is closed. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a 5-0 vote to close. Is there a motion to adopt with the typical 6 conditions?
And do
I
we
make a motion
add
to
that
adopt
other
the 6 typical conditions.
They're in there now.
The one,
It's in this. So that motion was made and seconded to adopt with the 6 universal conditions. I'll read the 6 conditions into the record. Number 1, that the owner of the building always pay the commercial property tax to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. 2, that the business retains a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. 3, that hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or a retired member of another police department that now lives in the city of Holyoke. 4, that there shall be no marijuana consumption allowed on site. 5, that the hours of operation be set according to the ordinances. And then 6, that all outstanding issues identified by the engineer's letter and the planning department's letter be addressed. And as we just noted, really for this case, it's only the engineer's issue that needs to be addressed. Do you understand and agree to the conditions?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So on the motion then to adopt the special permit with the 6 conditions, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to say no with the reservation that I may very well say yes, but I want to actually go walk the site, so.
So I'm saying yes with the stipulation that they're inside the 200 feet that we talked about,
Yeah.
which just hadn't been specifically considered, but sounds like it is.
So it's a 4-1 vote to approve the special permit with the 6 conditions that were read into the record, and this will be voted on at our next full city council meeting, which will be next Tuesday.
Thank you, committee.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Bacon, I think I'm turning things over to you.
Okay.
This is your cheat sheet if you need it.
Okay. Okay. So we are on to item 4. I would entertain a motion to take it up and open the public hearing.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have with us Libby and Juan still?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So item 4 is the public hearing for a special permit application of ACMJ Inc. for a marijuana manufacturing establishment at 532 Main Street to build and operate a marijuana cultivation and processing establishment.
Hi, you've got me again.
Oh.
Nice to see you all.
I guess to
You
be
changed
official-
sides here, though.
I guess to be official, you'll have to just state for the record, since it is a new
Sure.
public hearing.
My name is Isaac Fleischer. I'm an attorney here on behalf of ACMJ Incorporated. They are they're applying for a special permit to operate a marijuana manufacturing establishment at 532 Main Street. It's going to be limited to the second floor of 532 Main Street. It is a 2,000 square foot canopy. Sorry, I left my notes over here. So they have about 13,000 square feet of space on the floor, and they're going to be starting at about a 2,000 square foot grow, which is on pretty much the smallest end of cultivation, and will over time expand that to about 3,000 square feet. It's also in the general industry district. Is not within 200 feet of a school, and I'm going to invite Will Monahan up to speak about ACMJ.
So on the form that I'm looking
Yes.
at, just to clarify, this application came in June 1st?
That sounds about right. Yep.
All right. So just to be clear, we're in that same murky ground.
And so as it's currently drafted, it has to be 200 feet from
Any
door to
other
door.
use.
From any use.
Any other use?
Any other use.
Yeah.
So any use other than
Manufacturing.
marijuana manufacturing.
Well, manufacturing. I don't think we have a use that says marijuana manufacturing, per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's Will Monahan.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
So I'm one of 3 partners of ACMJ.
And can you just give us your name and address for the,
Yes, Will Monahan, 33 Longview Road in Port Washington, New York.
okay?
So I'm a director of ACMG. I'm responsible for the planning of the project. I'm here with my 2 partners, Stephen Fontana and Dirk Alfaroth. Dirk is also also the property owner, together with Susanna Alfaroth. So we've partnered with the property owner on this project, who have owned the building in Holyoke for almost a decade. The company is a Massachusetts registered C corporation. We're seeking a special permit to operate a marijuana manufacturing facility on part of the second floor. As Isaac stated, it's about a 13,000 square foot suite, but we're only starting with about 2,000 square feet of canopy. We expect over time, depending on demand, we'll try to expand that to around 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. But to start, it will only be 2. We submitted the application for a Tier 1 license for cultivation and manufacturing. Processing. We submitted the narrative and all the accompanying plans to evaluate the impacts of the proposed license for recreational use on the community as they relate to the economy, utilities, landscape, community, and the environment. The main business activity will be growing marijuana in accordance with the law, and the processing aspect will consist of a cold water system and will not require any extraction machinery or volatile chemicals. That is everything. on that part.
So can you just say the last part again in terms of the cultivation and processing, when you were talking about how you will be processing it?
Yeah, so the only processing we will be doing will require a cold water system, which is extracting using a cold water sieve.
Okay.
So there's no any harsh chemicals or machinery
Oh,
we're
okay.
putting in to the facility.
Are there any questions from committee members at this moment? Okay.
We'll have our architect on Zoom. He could walk you through the site plans.
Okay.
If that's it.
Thank you.
Noah, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Noah. I'm the architect for ACMJ, and I'm just going to share my screen and walk you through the project. Is everyone seeing a locust plan?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yes.
So this is where the project's located, on the second floor of 532 Main Street. We've added the 300-foot buffer here just called out what companies are around it. This is the site improvement plan. We have a very low impact on the site, really just taking an existing opening in the building and securing it for a sally port. The facility is not open to the public, so we're not making any changes to the parking, as what's there is totally adequate for these uses. We have an internal plan that's changed a little bit since our previous submission, just to take into account the fact that the hope is that the facility does grow from a 2,000 square foot canopy to closer to a 5,000 square foot canopy. You can see that we've got, the typical break and locker and bathing facilities, offices, a secured vault, security database room, drying and curing, trimming and packaging, flowering and mothering, cloning, and vegetative growth. And everything that's in the dash gray lines is planned for future development and is not really in consideration tonight. We have a secure waste management plan that just tracks waste from the facility down to the sally port, and just some basic sections through the facility. And that's about it.
So what is going on the other floors in the building, if anything?
I think it would be appropriate for Dirk to answer that.
Okay. Well, maybe before we switch gears, are there any other members of the committee that have questions about what we just saw?
Is there if I can, Madam Chair, is there an elevator that goes directly to that suite?
Correct.
There is. Sorry, I should have been more clear here. Yeah, the waste management plan goes from the facility through our man trap into the elevator, straight downstairs, and that elevator is directly attached to the sally port.
Is that the only elevator in the building, or is there another one?
I believe there is a second. I'm not sure of its condition. My scope didn't. That wasn't my scope. That wasn't within my scope.
I didn't hear you.
There is a second elevator.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I just want to. So this elevator that we're talking about is exclusive to this suite.
So it will be used exclusively by us when we use it.
Yeah.
We will secure it, but when we are not using it, it will be available to others in the building.
So it opens both sides.
Correct.
Okay. Let me contemplate on that one for a while. Go ahead. I'm all set.
Okay. I don't see anybody else on the committee wanting, I don't see any hands up, so if you want to go ahead, that would be great.
Okay, so my name is Dirk Aufroth, I'm the building owner. And you were asking about who are the other tenants. So ACMJ is planning to go on the second floor. Right below it is the haunted house. And above the space, right now it's empty. And there is another plan for another cultivation facility that will, I think, apply for their permit in a few days here in Holyoke.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking through this to see if there's other notes from planning and that, because I hadn't really studied it.
No problem.
But
We did give a clarification to the planning department on the size of our canopy space, so that was the one question.
Recently?
No, this was back in June.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the only question they had asked us.
All right. So I'm looking at an August 19th letter. And then I have your clarifying letter of June 14th. Now, I'm looking through just to see the security plan addressed in here. Not that we see the whole plan, but that it's been accepted.
Yeah, there should be a letter from the chief of police.
Hang on, let me just, maybe I missed it. You're looking at the same thing I'm looking at, right, Terry? Okay. You don't?
I assume it's in the planning part.
Yeah, it's usually just referenced in one of their letters. I'm just not seeing the typical letter from planning that we see, with all the,
Yeah, no, I'm not.
with all the
Yeah.
references. It just seems like maybe we don't have everything in this packet. Oh, well, I have the letter from
Oh, yeah.
August 19th. Let's see. I might have just missed it in here.
There was a comment about Chief Manny People approving the security plan.
Do you see it?
Yeah, it's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, section 7-10-6-1F,
Okay.
but it's pretty small print.
All right. Thank you for finding that. Okay, so I'm all set with that part. Thank you. So I'm seeing relative to the operational plan that in August, the question was asked, which was the same question that Mayor Murphy had, relative to how you would ensure the exclusive access to the freight elevator. So was there a written answer to that question that was provided by you folks? Or are they waiting for that?
I think it was brought up at our meeting with the planning department, and we explained that we would lock one side of the elevator to the other floors while we were using it, and also secure the area, secure it at the bottom so no one can access it while we're using it. So it was verbally explained to them, but they never asked us for a written response.
Okay, so just, well, I know you're, at least one of you's been involved in another application, but usually what we see is a letter such as the one from August 19th, and then we will see a follow-up letter that answers those questions
I see.
down the line, and then planning will usually say accepted, da-da-da-da. Or if they have any further questions, they'll ask more. So it just seems like we don't have everything.
In our operations plan, it addresses it as well, in the last paragraph.
All right.
Do you want me to
hang on.
read it?
Well, so did the operations plan come after August 19th?
No.
Okay, so they're still asking the question after I'm thinking they read it. So
Okay.
and I'm not trying to second guess anybody.
No, it's no problem.
Usually-
That's the first I'm hearing of the question. so.
Usually so do you have the letter from planning dated August 19th?
No,
Okay, so maybe that is why I can show you it. Do we have an extra copy of it?
Would it be in there?
Here, maybe I can.
Should I have seen?
It'll mess up your packet, but,
It's intended to be messed up anyway.
all right. It's,
This is,
looks like
yeah,
this.
this is the letter.
Okay.
No, they're in the pre-planning meeting, they asked.
So this is the letter that I have in the packet, and so when they ask these questions, we're accustomed to seeing a response that has the answers to those.
Got it.
But if you don't have it, then somewhere there's been a little breakdown of communication, perhaps.
Yeah, they never sent it.
But I need to get back on my.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Let the record show that I've provided the applicant with the letter of August 19th from the planning department that has at least one question, and we haven't gone through them all. And the applicant stipulates that they had a verbal meeting with the department, but they hadn't received the written letter. So I think we'll just need to continue this so that you can answer it, and then we can have the full application to move forward on. And you know that we're in the situation of having to clarify this whole use issue with the table anyway. So we have a two-part thing going on, which hopefully will get clarified, because I understand the debate around the intention, but there's also been some other reasonable issues raised on the matter of buffers. So hopefully those things could come together and be clarified at a similar timeline.
Before it's continued, can I just?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
If so I'm sorry that we didn't see the letter, but if the only outstanding question relates to the exclusivity of the elevator.
Well, no, it's just, I didn't read. So there's, under section 710.6, there's 2 questions. Under 10.1.6.2, there's 3 questions. So, I mean, there's a few things that, we just wouldn't.
Understood. I talked to John Kelly a few weeks ago when this was getting sent to the committee, and I asked him specifically, is there anything I need to address before that meeting? And he said no. So this is the first time I'm seeing this.
All right, well, I'm only describing to you what we're accustomed to seeing. Maybe because they've changed their procedure of what they're doing a little bit, he didn't feel that the answer needed to be in writing, but I'm just looking at the sequence of the information. So you provided your operational plan, planning did its review, and again, it doesn't look like there was a huge amount of questions. And maybe you did address them all in the meeting. I really don't know.
This is addressed to Rebecca, so it never got from Rebecca to us.
So,
August 19th. May 25th.
so I'm just thinking that typically you would have been copied on it as well at the time that was sent to her. And Terry, you would agree that usually we would have those answers,
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
right?
Yep, usually.
Yeah. So I really think the best thing we can do, I mean, you have a pretty complete application. There's just a few things left. We wouldn't be able to, with the use issue hanging over our head right now, after the May 17th or whatever that specific date was, we need to clarify that, so as we move forward, we are under a current ordinance, regardless of intent or not. So,
You want to close the public, or you want to leave the public
we
hearing?
have to continue the public hearing to get the answers.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing.
Should we go to the 26th, the same night?
Yeah, because that's when we'll have other information, to October 26th.
All right. Do I have a second on that, committee members?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we'll continue to October 26th at 6:30, and then hopefully both things will come together and can move forward. And it'll give you a chance to submit that letter to them and us. All right?
Thank you.
Sorry for any confusion.
It's okay.
And I'll stand corrected if it comes in a different way.
So
All right?
I'll address these questions in the meantime directly to the planning department.
Yeah, yeah. All right?
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, committee.
We haven't
Good night.
gotten the planning letter for it yet, but they wanted to get the hearing going because it was within the statutory timeline. And we were told we were gonna get it by today, but it didn't come.
Okay, so that doesn't stop us from opening the hearing
No, I
timely.
just wanted you to.
But we won't be able to do anything. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item 5.
So moved.
So, yeah, take up item 5 and open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5, public hearing for a special permit application of H&H Holdings, Inc. for a marijuana establishment at 4048 Main Street to operate a cultivation and product manufacturing establishment. I've just been informed by our administrative assistant that we do not have a letter from the planning department relative to this application yet, but because we did not want the timeline to be exceeded, we have opened this public hearing. Is there anybody from the applicant available on Zoom?
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
that's the attorney, yeah.
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for your patience. And so we have not apparently received anything over from planning at this time, but that doesn't stop you from giving us the overview of the project.
Yeah, and I quite frankly, and I can't help but say this, I'm significantly disappointed that that letter has not gotten over to this committee, because we've been through 3 meetings with the planning board and 3 or 4 rounds of review memo exchanges with the planning department. And it's my recollection that they were ready to go to a vote tonight on our site plan. And that meeting was postponed for lack of a quorum, as Aaron Vega indicated.
Yes.
But we were certainly under the impression, with emails that I had sent to Jeff Burkott and Jeff Anderson, requesting that letter be sent 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I don't know how it couldn't have been sent. I'm very disappointed to hear that. We've had we've been working on this project since June 30th, and you're right, you just barely got this in within the 65-day time frame to open the hearing. So I'm glad that's occurred, but yes, we would like to move forward. And I can read, if necessary, I don't think you'll want me to, line for line, word for word of that 15-page review letter that Jeff Burkhardt provided to us.
Now, hang on a second, because oh no, this is for the other, this letter is for the other application.
Yeah, this is the
That-
previous one.
But
This is the last one.
it's with this ACE, because we're on, hang on, I don't know if I have anything for H&H Holdings, do I? Hang on. Is this one H&H?
This is it. right
Here's
here.
H&H, all right. I just want to see what I do have from planning for you. So I have your plan. And I have a letter from the city engineer dated August 5th.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's all I have.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Did you have more
for
than
everybody
one
concerned and involved.
series of letters with questions going back and forth, or was there just two?
There were questions, comments, requests for additional information, and working with Reynolds Engineering, we provided all that.
Okay.
Uh,
Well,
about-
on behalf of the city, I apologize for the disconnect, but,
Well, I don't know if it's and I'm not trying to be difficult
no, I hear your frustration.
with the committee, but,
But-
I mean, is it stated in your ordinance or in the city council's regulations that you must have that letter in hand
So-
in order to?
So in the new ordinance, there was actually a more robust planning process outlined within the ordinance than had existed in the previous ordinance. So it actually gives more emphasis on the planning process than it did before the revision. So we are further, how do I want to say it? The process is more clearly defined in the current ordinance than it had been before May. So we are, as a committee, reliant upon it, unfortunately, for tonight. We really, as a committee, we don't have room to step aside from that process. We have to wait for it. So the only thing I was able to do to keep it moving was to open the public hearing timely, so you didn't run out of time.
Yeah, well, so the committee didn't run out of time, not
Well,
us, because
if-
we filed properly.
Well, it's, if the timeline lapses, then the process has to begin over, so.
No, then there's Madam Chair, that would render a constructive approval on our part. So we've worked well within the requirements of the zoning act and your ordinance. The audit, we're certainly going to have to get to the bottom, all of us, on this city council vote that never got promulgated, codified in your zoning ordinance, the zoning ordinance that you have on your city website. We have followed to the letter of the ordinance, and we are, without a doubt, in my 20 years of zoning experience, we meet every requirement for this special permit to issue. Now, with that said, we filed for site plan approval on June 30th. We've had 3 abbreviated meetings with the planning board. We were supposed to have another one on 9/14. It was canceled due to apparently a lack of proper notice. We don't know why. That was unfortunate because all that required was a posting in the city clerk's office. I don't understand how that happened. Then it was continued from tonight because of a lack of a quorum. And we were at the point in our presentations, in our responses, in our revisions to the site plan, where we are beyond confident that we were going to get our site plan approval this evening at 5:30 and then meet with this committee for the special permit presentation.
And I hear
So
you,
now-
and I acknowledge your frustration, and I see our city attorney would like to weigh in and perhaps offer some clarification. So I'd like to, do we need to suspend rules for me to?
No, I think he's
We're in the public hearing, right? So Attorney Bissonnette, if you would like to weigh in?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Hello.
I want to concur with my brother who represents the parties applying for the special permit. I've had the good or bad fortune to have joined the law department at the end of June. And as part of my indoctrination into proceedings, I've had to share some of this misery, frankly, in trying to discern the process. I can verify that in the 3 meetings and attempted meetings with the planning department, they have confirmed during those meetings that there's been an exchange back and forth in writing, and that the petitioner here has complied with every request from planning. And that seemed to me to be, from those 3 meetings I observed, what was going on with the planning department. They have continued because they only had 3 for their quorum tonight and needed the 4th or 5th to be there for all the meetings. They weren't able to proceed, unfortunately. But I think in this instance, we may be able to go forward with a special permit recommendation based on the fact that you can approve it essentially before Tuesday. The planning department would have to provide the council with that paperwork that you're looking for. But knowing that it exists certainly gives me a level of confidence that that can be easily accomplished tomorrow morning. And I do want to verify, I've seen that memo myself in the records, so I'm sure it exists.
So,
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
thank you, and thank you, Attorney Bissonnette. We do have the further issue relative to the ordinance that we still have to clear up and
May I offer one more comment then?
yes.
The other thing that I think is important for all of us to begin to recognize is that the city website is deficient in that it is not current. Unfortunately, in investigating the provider of the Muni Code, it looks like the most recent up-to-date only carried through to January of 2020. They're updated annually in October. I checked today. We have the new one coming, should be online shortly, and it's deficient. It's only through January of 2021. So this would not update anyone who wanted to see what our current zoning ordinances were, would not give them fair notice of any changes since January of this year, certainly not the May changes. So I can understand and accept that there is confusion because I was confused myself till I investigated. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I don't see where we have another path at the moment except to continue it till we can get clarification and an answer on the ordinance that is on the table. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this.
I don't know if that's another hand there, or is that the one?
Well,
huh?
I don't see where we have a choice.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a great deal of concern over these alleged zoning changes that either have occurred and been codified or were voted in the city council chamber and never codified. I don't know. And I can tell you that there's going to be a huge ballyhoo over this, not just with applicants in the process, but given that building permits, the statute of limitations on properly issued building permits is 6 years, if what is being suggested is now applicable, then the building inspector is going to go and have to issue cease and desist orders to every marijuana facility that's been issued permits over the past 6 years, because they didn't, there's no such thing as municipal estoppel, they didn't follow the ordinance, as this committee is now indicating is in place.
So we're not in a position to debate that particular agenda item right now, but
That's fine, but it keeps coming up.
But I know. I will say, though, that when we have implemented ordinances, they do not go retroactive. They go forward from the date that they're approved.
No, they go forward from the date in which it was noticed in the local newspaper. So that could be several months, 6 months. So many of the applicants who've been in front of you over the past 6 months could be in jeopardy as well. This is a real mess for the city and all the applicants who are up and running and pending.
Well, I do agree
But with that
you.
said, Madam Chair, I would like to present tonight. I don't see why we can't at least
Okay.
present.
Well, then I will entertain your presentation, and then we will continue the public hearing to the end of October.
So I may proceed?
Yes?
Okay, thank you. And forgive me for being a bit testy, but this is quite astonishing for me. So I'm Jim Valeriani with the Mensing Group. With me is Blake Mensing of our law firm. We represent H&H Cultivation and Realty for a cultivation and manufacturing facility at 40-48 Main Street. That limited liability company is owned by Yazan Haddad and Oliver Holmberg, who are with us tonight. Also with us is Terry Reynolds of Reynolds Engineering and Matt Boyle of Anderson Architects. They've been working quite well. They've come up with very excellent architecturals and site plans for this project that has been in the works and been under consideration since November of 2020, when H&H bought this property for the sole purpose of developing a marijuana facility. So they've invested a significant amount of money, a significant amount of time, and we've been through many, many hearings to get to this point tonight. So with that said, it's a 3-story warehouse-type building on Main Street, completely within the industrial zone. No schools within 200 or 500 feet. None of that is a concern. The 3-story building would be utilized for cultivation and manufacturing. There is a vacant lot adjoining the building, which they also own under the same deed. And with that vacant lot, we are proposing to construct a 30 by 90 greenhouse for additional cultivation to make use of that lot and improve the lot for parking. The improved parking would meet the parking requirements, as Terry Reynolds will get into in a bit. And as I indicated, we've been through 3 meetings with the planning board, so we've refined these plans excellently. And I think when Terry gives an overview, you'll see the level of effort that went in with a great amount of detail. So the company has its provisional license from the Cannabis Commission. It received that in June. We have our police department security review memo approving the security plan. That was received in June. We have that HCA, of course, with the mayor's office, and that in which we made a commitment to hire locally and are paying a 3% community impact fee. In terms of the trips to the site, there'll be a total of 40 employees. And again, we meet the parking requirements for those 40 employees. It's 1 space per 4 employees at the highest operating shift. But there's a tire maintenance and repair operation in the building currently as a tenant. And the amount of trips to the site for the H&H employees will be less than the current trips to the site for that operation and any other typical manufacturing use. So the trips to the site are going down. We have sufficient parking. We have met the parking requirements. There are on-street spaces that are being created as well. Our hours, I believe, are, I can't recall what we were seeking, but the maximum we could possibly seek. There is a 24-foot gate for security at night. That gate would stay open during the day for employees to exit and enter, and at night it would be locked, and there would be full security and alarm systems employed. There'll be a fully secured passageway from the factory building, the warehouse building where the manufacturing will take place, to the greenhouse. So employees will not have to go outside. They can walk through that passageway, and no contamination could occur and affect the plants. Our abutters are other manufacturing buildings across the street. There's commercial buildings to the northeast, vacant lots owned by the city, which we've expressed an interest in acquiring for this use. So this is a hugely positive impact for the city for these vacant lots that have been vacant for quite some time. And in the rear, we have the commuter rail tracks, which are separate our use from some residential property in the rear with high fencing and a wall. So there'll be no impact at all to residential properties. With that said, I'd like to have Terry Reynolds, please, Terry, go over the site plan. I think it's important he does so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hold our questions till everybody's gone over the plan. Okay?
Thank you. Terry Reynolds, T. Reynolds Engineering. If I can, I'm just going to share a screen. So this is our site, and just do a quick. This is our location. It's on Main Street, 4248 right here. What's being proposed in existing warehouse buildings here and the vacant parcel here was an old church. And this is currently fenced in right now with some growth around the back of opportunist vegetation, you might say, that has posed an area that'll be actually good in terms of there's been a lot of drug issues going on in back there. So what's being proposed here is reuse of the two existing buildings that are connected, a parking lot area, a new greenhouse, and then a connecting access way, walkway, connecting the greenhouse to the building, with the doorway here, ramping down, and connecting through that way. There are currently 12 spaces being proposed for the handicap space. In this location, the entire parking area and greenhouse will be secured with an 8-foot high fence with privacy slats in it. This gate here is what Jim had indicated would be open during the day during operating hours. At night, it'll be closed and secured. The property itself has minimal opportunities for a lot of plantings, but in the front, the fence has been set back to allow for some limited ground plantings, ornamental grasses. Some street trees are being proposed that are consistent with other street trees that are located further down along both sides of the street. The sidewalks are going to be reconstructed. There's currently a curb cut on for the vacant property right here that's going to be moved over, and that sidewalk will be reconstructed in that manner. There's also a curb cut for existing garage doors in this existing building that will be reconstructed so that it will have curbing in that area too. For these street trees, openings will be cut in the sidewalk for the street trees. The parking, street parking will be restriped, gaining one additional space with the loss of the garage door entrances. The main entrance to the building will be right here, with an existing garage door where the current tire operation works out of right here. That is the secure sally port for the business. In addition, so we have a couple mechanical pads, transformer and generator pads out here. An enclosed dumpster area will be located right here. And then a bike rack for employee bikes will be located within the fenced area for that sort of access and use. The site itself, in terms of utilities and stormwater, currently the buildings discharge the stormwater off the back of the building to grassed area in the rear. This is a current grassed area from the old church lot. So this, as you know, is being developed into a parking lot with a greenhouse. Stormwater from the greenhouse, the walkway, parking lot, and this first building will be collected into a subsurface stormwater system located here. It will be treated with a water quality unit, which is intended to ensure that this system will not fail due to loading of sediments and so on. This will infiltrate into the ground with an overflow that goes back out into the street. The system here is designed to meet all the stormwater standards for the 2, 10, and 100-year events, with reductions exceeding the 25% required by the city. Lighting has been designed for the site. Minimal lighting, just stoop lighting over the doorways, emergency egress in the back here, and then 2 wall-mounted lights for the parking lot. This has all been designed not to have spillover into adjacent properties or any significant spillover into the street itself. There is some limited spillover from the stoop lighting just in the front, which would be expected for typical stoop lighting on a street as such as this. Service for the building, there is current water service coming into the building in this location, both fire and domestic. There's a large sewer service coming into the building right here that is anticipated to serve the entire project. Sewer, there are not bathrooms in the greenhouse, but there will be processed water that will be discharged, and that's being routed through the back into the existing sewer system of the building. And then additionally, we have some construction phase efforts, which is a tracking pad located here to prevent construction vehicles from tracking dirt out into the street, erosion control barriers across the front of the site. And that's pretty much it.
Can you speak a little bit more about the existing sanitary sewer service? I'm looking at a letter that we have dated August 5th.
Yep.
And it came from Robert Parent, our city engineer. Do you have that letter?
I have the letter and have addressed the letter.
Okay,
and Bob Parent has since replied that he is satisfied.
Okay.
That is all in the file.
Okay,
which you should have.
So I'm just letting you know that what I have in front of me is the August 5th letter, but I do not have any subsequent correspondence.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's all planning board correspondence, and it would appear that none of that was forwarded to city council.
I don't know why we got one, but in any event.
Well, that's because Bob Parent addressed that first one to city council and CC'd the planning board.
Oh, okay. Okay. So are there any questions from committee?
I mean, I think I know 2 things. In the potential purchase, that was also going to be greenhouse if that was approved. Am I correct? There's 2 vacant lots
Yes.
that were looking to be purchased.
Oh, the other.
That would be, yep.
So that would be a continuation of the greenhouse impact, right?
Well, that will be a whole separate filing if that is to
Yeah,
occur.
but that would be, but ultimately, if that all worked out, that is what the additional lots would be for a greenhouse. At least that's what I've been.
Likely so, yes.
Okay, okay.
And that will take some time, Mr. Mayor, to work out. We're in front of the committee next October 5th, the government committee, to have our proposal formally accepted, and then we need to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with economic development and the city solicitor. So and due diligence has to occur. So that's months down the road.
Okay.
Okay.
Not a part of this project right now.
And so I have a question, and you may know this answer, you may not, because I know that you were looking at it from the perspective of the old ordinance. But given the location at 4048 Main Street, are you in excess of 200 feet of other uses besides manufacturing? i.e., are you within 200 feet of a residential? Or
No.
what?
Would have to take the measurement beyond the train tracks over to, I can't recall the name of that road that runs along the train tracks, that avenue.
All right, and I'm only asking the question to inform us when we're trying to figure out how to clean up the sloppy ordinance next time.
That is our 200-foot offset from the building.
Without knowing what those other
Yeah.
buildings are, it's hard to tell. So,
Yeah, that's going to include, 03 is a vacant building. 02, I believe, is a vacant building. 01 is currently a commercial building. And then there are some commercial buildings down here at the end here. And then the remainder, this is vacant. Currently, this is a tire manufacturing inside, and then this piece is vacant.
okay,
And as you can see, it's under 200 feet
okay,
from the residences up in here.
okay.
And if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes?
this is Blake Mensing, one of the owners here.
Oh, okay.
Through the chair, if I may.
Sure, you have the floor.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a cannabis attorney. I've helped get over 5% of all the licenses in the entire state. And I only bring that up just to tell you the source of my knowledge here. The Cannabis Control Commission's regulations were recently revised to include a term known as an impassable barrier for purposes of buffer zone measurement. And it includes things like highways. Certainly the commuter rail and fence fits that state regulatory definition of impassable barrier. So it's not just as the crow flies, it actually is measured as a human could traverse. And just, I think the likelihood of someone being able to traverse that commuter rail line there is pretty unlikely given the fencing. So just wanted to identify that there's also a state regulatory standard at issue here as well.
Okay. All right, and then, I guess we'll have to address the rest of the things at the end of October, but because of the issue of buffers that has been brought up under the other public hearing, there's also been just concerns raised relative to uses such as residential being near the MME and the smells and the discharge coming through, even though we do have in the ordinance relative to odor control, and everybody, to my knowledge, has been stipulating that they're complying with that aspect as much as possible. So I don't know if we're in a situation where perhaps some technology has changed since we passed our ordinance, or, where we're at with that. But as these different industries evolve and we end up with uses next to each other, certain parts of ordinances that were sort of not a problem in the past become more to the forefront as things get closer and closer together. So I'm just interested to know relative to that processing and the nature of how you're doing it. As one applicant explained, they use cold water or one process or another. And I don't know if your processes have caused less odor or more, or how that might work, or if it's been an issue or a non-issue so far. So if you know or could inform us a little bit, that would be helpful.
Sure. With respect to odor, just to be clear, the state regulations require that odor be controlled. In addition, there's an inherent incentive for a cultivator to keep odors in, because if you have a non-airtight or controlled air circulation environment, basically smell gets out, things can get in. So this product and cultivating product is too valuable to allow the free flow of air in terms of avoidance of pests, pathogens, microbes, anything that would fail the product during the state regulatory testing. And I did want to address, I know again this is not the exact topic, but the gentleman who expressed concerns about public health relating to cannabis odors, none of that is scientifically valid at all. I've heard him speak before. He actually yelled at me in the parking lot once at my store, Holyoke Cannabis, just down the street. So he just does not like cannabis. That's the law. So that's how democracy works. I'm just very, very, very tired of listening to people who lost question 4 complain that that's the law with fact-free nonsense. So you can listen to it. You're obligated to. He's just not telling you the truth, and I'm not going to take it.
So I hear your opinion, and we hear everyone's opinion in the chambers, and we respectfully consider them. We have found in some circumstances, and you have to understand the history of Holyoke also has been to be very strict relative to smoke and smoking and the public parks and every other thing. So the city has a history of being very stringent in that regard, with the high asthma rates and the coal that got as clean as it could, but it wasn't clean enough. And so we have a long history of concerns and debate and discussion around these kinds of things. So we welcome the knowledge that's gained with the more practice in the industry. And we also look to try to create a win-win for the business people coming in and the other people who've invested in this city with our urban renewal plan, under which many thousands of hours were spent to create a vision for the downtown. So as things are coming closer and closer together, I think we're finding some natural tensions, which is to be expected, and I think it's our job to try to come out with what's best for the city and is fair to all involved. So I appreciate your comments, and are there any other questions for the applicant from members of the committee at this time?
Would you like to see our elevations, our architecturals, Madam Chair? That could take all of 2 minutes.
Sure.
Matt, are you still on? Our architect?
Just get off mute.
You're on mute, Matthew.
I am, but I'm unable to present at the moment. I wasn't aware that we were presenting tonight.
Okay.
I think Terry has the drawings and he's able to show them.
Okay, thank you.
I am too.
Yes, I don't have them on this right now. If you could
Well,
present them, that would be great.
That's okay, we can save them
for
till our next meeting, and I do appreciate the overview. It's, and hopeful, and in the next meeting, you won't have to do the exact thing over again. We can just go over the things that we didn't do tonight.
Yep.
So.
When is your next meeting?
So I'm entertaining a motion from,
Am I going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing until October 26th?
at 6:30. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So this public hearing is continued to October 26th at 6:30. And I hope that we will have all the information and that we're able to move through our other issue with some resolution depending how the debate and discussion goes. And there you have it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You also.
Thank you.
Make a motion to take up item 6.
Is there a second to take up
Second.
item 6? All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Item 6 is a street vendor license application of Nicole Ortiz for operation of a food truck at 164 Race Street and 73 Sargent Street.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So Nicole was on a little bit ago. She dropped off. I have emailed with her. I let her know I would inform her when her item was coming back up. So I'm just looking to see her come back on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can we take up item number 7 in the meantime and table?
I think she'll probably be right on, and she's been very patiently waiting through a lot.
Absolutely.
So. We'll give her a couple minutes, and if she's having a hard time getting on, we'll go to item 7.
Sounds like a plan.
Were we requiring Tanya for item 7? Dawn?
I'm sorry?
Were we going to require Tanya?
Timing? Oh, well, she was calling in also. Yeah, she was going to come in by phone.
Okay.
Are we seeing Nicole yet?
I don't see her back on yet.
And is Tanya with us?
Or maybe this is her under a different name.
Oh, okay. If we can check.
Hi, is that Nicole?
Hi, yes.
Oh, hello, Nicole. I'm Linda Bacon, and I'm sitting in his chair tonight to move your application forward, okay?
Okay.
So how about if you just give us your last name and address, and then just give us an overview of what you would like to do.
So my last name is Ortiz, and the business address is 285 High Street. So we would just like to operate our food truck that we've operated since last season. So we would just like to continue to operate.
Oh, so this is a renewal of one that you've already had.
So I wasn't even aware that I needed one last year. It was actually just told to me this season. So it wouldn't even be a renewal. It would be a completely new one.
Oh, okay then. All right. Good enough. So in looking at this application, it looks like you want to operate at 164 Race Street and also 73 Sargent Street. So would you be moving this from site to site, or would you have 2 trucks at 2 sites?
So we currently only have 1 truck, and we currently only do the Holyoke Farmers Market, which is at 164 Race Street.
Okay.
We have parked at 73 Sargent in the past, and we would just like to still be able to have that option.
Okay. All right. So it would be 1 truck using both sites. And what days and hours are you looking to do this?
So we currently do Saturdays from 10:30 to 3 to 5 p.m. sometimes. And then that's pretty much the only day that we're out every week right now.
I'm sorry, did you say 10:30 to 3 or 10:30 to 5?
It depends on the crowd, but typically until 3 p.m., but sometimes we do stay later until 5 p.m.
Okay, so I would encourage you to seek from us the hours that you would most likely be there the longest, so that way you would have flexibility.
Okay.
So would that be 10:30 to 5? Would you ever want to start at 10, or is 10:30 the earliest time?
It would be 10:30 to 5.
Okay. And you're only looking to do Saturdays?
I mean, we sometimes will go out on the street during the week. We haven't really in the past couple months, but we just like to have that option to be able to.
Okay.
But currently we only go out on Saturdays.
Okay, so if you think about what you're hoping to do over the next year with your business, and you put before us the days and hours that if you're able to accomplish it, you would like to do it, it would be useful for us to have that.
Okay.
So,
So I have to get the exact approved times and dates, to operate the truck.
well, the thing is, if you think you might like to operate your truck Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, if we give you the permit that includes more days, then you can just do it if you want to. But if you limit yourself only to the Saturday, then you'll have to come back and then look to add to it. So I'm just suggesting if you think you'll be doing 2 or 3 days, you might want to ask for approval for that now.
Okay, yeah, so then I would like to ask for Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
So, is that what we, I think that's what we allow in the ordinance,
I think it's
right?
8 to 8, yeah.
I think you're right.
Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
okay. All right, that way it would give you flexibility, and you
Right.
then have the ability to be at those locations between those times on those days, okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, the other things that I have in front of me are, let's see. So, you have received a permit. I'm looking to see who it's through. Oh, from DPW.
Yes, I have a permit with DPW as well as the health department.
Yep.
Okay. And we see your insurance policy, I believe this is.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Are there questions for the applicant from any members of the committee?
I'll just make this point.
Yes, Terry?
Everything
Mayor Murphy?
Nicole does with her restaurant here on High Street, and Nicole, it is you that runs the restaurant on High Street, correct?
Yes.
She's got a she runs a restaurant right across the street here on High Street.
Oh,
And I have heard nothing but good things about both how she operates it and the way she does. And if she does the same thing with the trucks, I think, I just wish her the best of luck, and I think
good.
we should approve it.
and what's the name of the restaurant?
Craves Food.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's Crave Holyoke.
Okay. Well, great then. Anybody else want to weigh in at all?
I want to thank Nicole. Nicole, thank you so much for doing your business in Holyoke. I'm so thoroughly impressed with how you've handled the pandemic and brought the community together. Thank you so much for all the work and everything, and how you're setting it an example for future females. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I really appreciate you for conducting that business here in Holyoke. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay then, if there's no further questions or comments, I'd like to entertain a
I'll make a
motion.
motion that we grant the permit.
It's a, yeah,
Vendor
Second.
license.
a street vendor license. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think I heard Libby too, so it's.
Yes.
Okay, 4-0 to recommend approval of the license, and this will go to the next city council meeting, which is the first Tuesday in October, which,
The 5th.
the 5th of October, okay? Thank you very much.
right,
and
thank you.
Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long night.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Good night.
I'd like to make a motion to take up item number 7 off the table, or
All in favor? Aye. Item 7, filed by Counselor McGee, ordered that the position of professional accountant that has been budgeted for the Auditor's Department for fiscal year 2022 be assigned to grade 10 of Schedule A of the classification and hiring schedules of the City of Holyoke ordinances. So I understand we have Tanya Dowiak with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Tanya. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing much better, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm glad you had plenty of time to rest up while we were doing the rest of the meeting.
Yes, and I did.
So, can you just walk us through to remind us of what was in the budget, and that if we take this back to the city council, we're good to go and we're within everything that we already approved, and this is just the final structural piece of it?
Yes, that's correct. So this accountant position actually is a new position in my office. The job description itself, which I believe was put into the city council agenda by the solicitor's office, is actually based off of the auditor's job description, and it will be a backup to many of the things that I do, and also will support like many of the projects that we need to get done in the city, like starting, using Munis and the payroll system and accruals for time off, things like that, going to the departments and actually, helping with the audits and helping the accountant so that we can get things a little more tidy in the city. We did budget the $60,000 in the budget this year, so the money is there. And that's about it. It needed to be, because it was new, it needed a salary schedule. And so I had a conversation with the solicitor's department, and they thought that it would be best to go into the new Schedule A ordinance, which is also where my position lies.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee for Tanya?
No.
Seeing none, hearing none. If anybody's talking, you're on mute on Zoom, so I can't hear anything. So I'm taking that as we're good to go.
Yep.
So if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion the order be adopted.
Is there a second? The motion is that it be
Second.
adopted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So we need to refer this to the law department to be drawn in legal form though, right?
I think it'll just be added to the schedule.
But,
They'll probably have to give us legal form for city
right,
council
yeah,
meeting.
that's what I mean.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we've approved adding it to the ordinance, and we'll refer it to legal for legal form.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy, for that reminder.
Okay.
I'm a little rusty.
There you go.
All right, well, that completes our agenda for the night, and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
To adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
No.